Intro mist at first light drapes a European field of mud. Metal meets metal with the faint patter of rain. The line stands close, coarse wool damp with the night. In their hands, wooden hafts darkened by sweat. In cloth pouches, hard bread, tough yet keeping, horses breathe steam into the chill. Banners are not resplendent. The pallet runs to earth brown, ash grey, and cold air. In paintings and tales, battle often blazes. One thunderous charge shatters everything. Swords flare with glory. A single day decides a dynasty. In truth it is quieter, slower, harder. Ranks packed deep. Shields pressed close. Spears raised into a forest. Archers change tempo to the call of the horn. The men with stakes go first, driving wood into the mud to break a horse's run. Cavalry is not always the decider. The sword is not the king of the field. The weight lies with discipline, position, and weather. Early on, feudal duty gathers men from many lordships. Their gear does not match. Some bring only spear and thick cloth. Some wear mail. Later, kings and city-states pay steadier wages. Mercenaries and town militias appear. Knights remain the costly core, trained from childhood. Yet most of the ground belongs to infantry. Spearmen hold the line. Archers and crossbowmen keep the distant beat. Billmen and two-handed foot open the gate when the enemy formation sags. Light horse scout, strike a flank, then slip away clean. Armour shifts with the centuries. Mail endures across many lives. By the later age, lamed plate covers near the whole body, heavy enough to matter yet supple enough to move. The bassinet hugs head and neck. Weapons spread wide, even the sword carries status, though the spear is cheap and efficient. Polearms like halberd, bill, and pike deliver fearsome cuts and thrusts. The mace deals wounds through crushing force. Iron tubes that spit fire appear near the end. Still crude, yet they herald another age. Medieval war is not only clash in open fields. Siege takes the larger share and often decides. Ladders rise in the rain. A ram drums on the gate. Siege towers roll forward on round timbers. Counterweight trebuchets cast great stones into walls already veined with cracks. Defenders trust to moats, thick curtains, corner towers, arrow loops, postern doors, and stores within. They drop rocks, pour scalding water, set sharp stakes against the night. Terrain is always the quiet commander. Low hills pin a wing in place. Forests cap the reach of sight. Rivers and streams force ranks to break as they cross. A muddy field can swallow the momentum of heavy harness. The winning side often chose where to stand. It is not only a matter of courage. Behind every drumbeat stands supply. Many soldiers outfit themselves and carry their own rations. They live on the land they pass, sometimes by levy, sometimes by theft. Hard bread, salted meat, and small beer get them through the day. Inland rivers and inner seas can feed great hosts. The wagon train is the army's fragile heel. Within the ranks, training and discipline keep time. Longbow archers drill for years to draw a stubborn bow. Knights learn riding, combat, and order from boyhood. The mind in battle is not only a shout. The cavalry charge aims to break formation and spirit more than to punch through steel. Yet long rains, want of food, and sickness are the slow eroders. Piety flares in many places. Relics travel with the banners. They brace the heart when the north wind sweeps the field. Beyond the ring of fighting, common folk bear the greater weight. Taxes rise. Goods are requisitioned. Houses are taken for quarters. Pestilence walks with the columns. Food grows dear during sieges. Villages fall silent after each passage of troops. Amid mud, wood, leather, and steel, the quiet beauty of soldiering shows itself. Beauty in a hedge of spears set in the right place. In a breastplate scarred yet life-saving. In the midnight cadence of the smith's hammer. In the calm of a captain as he watches the wind turn. Glory does not live in fireworks. It lives in organisation and patience. This will be a journey that peels away the mythic varnish to touch the ground. From force structure to weapons and armour. From sieges and terrain to logistics in the soldier's day. From the psychology of war to the fates of civilians. The story opens in layers, unhurried and clear. No clamour, no show. Only history standing close, beneath the morning mist of a new day. The familiar picture rises very quickly in the collective memory. On wet grass, a rank of steel-clad knights couch their lances. Horses change gait. Banners pull taut in the cold wind. With a single impact, the infantry opposite breaks like surf against a beach. The image is neat and easy to love because everything has a clear order between the strong and the weak. In many tales, that is the fateful minute, where glory is decided by one headlong charge. Within that handsome frame, imagination often grants all power to the heavy cavalry. At the sight of bright armour and flying horses, people think of certain victory. Reality is quieter and harder to read. The force of a charge depends on the ground under the hooves, on the commander's cadence, on whether the infantry spear line keeps its spacing and its angle. A long strip of mud can drink up all momentum. A row of preset stakes can break the formation. A narrow stream just ahead can make horsemen hesitate. On damp pasture, what decides things is not only courage, but approach vector, the gap between two companies, and the ability to wheel on time to keep strength for the next pass. At the same time, the halo around the sword is often placed at the centre. The sword enters verse and painting as an emblem of honour and lineage. The sword-bearer appears as the figure of skill and gravity. Yet if one looks at the broad plain of war, the infantry's primary weapon is the spear. The spear is cheap, long, and effective when standing in dense order. Beside it stretches a whole family of polearms, from long-hafted axes to bec de corbin and long spears, able to thrust, hew, and hook armoured opponents to the ground. The sword is often the secondary arm, drawn when formations have fastened together or when the gap has narrowed. It is a symbol of class, but not the sole pillar of real combat. Its steel blazes in the hall, while out on the field it is rain, mud, and wood that decide the rhythm of survival. Another layer of imagining leads many to believe that history turns in a single afternoon. Battles are told as single days where a king wins and a dynasty's fate shifts at once. The truth is usually slower and heavier. Medieval war is largely a chain of extended tasks: marching, mustering, scouting, encamping, raising fieldworks, negotiating, withdrawing and returning. Siege takes more time and strength than open field clashes. A tract of land changes hands after weeks of blockade, after hunger inside the walls, not after 1 hour of sword and spear. While the public speaks of a decisive day, out there the real matter is a rainy season, a granary full enough to live out the month, and a supply train struck on the left. Beneath those attractive frames lies the narrator's natural need. We all want a tidy through line. The image of a knight winning by solitary valour makes history easier to remember. The image of the sword sets honour and metal inside a single object. The image of a fated battle gives us the feeling that everything turns in a flash, not in logistics and weather. Those frames smooth the telling, suit court painting and the stage. They are beautiful, but they also blur the level where mud, sweat, and discipline are the core. We should also untie a basic misunderstanding that often slips into depictions. Many films stage a chaotic crowd rushing together, weapons flailing without order. On a real field, formation is the spine. Spearmen hold ranks, shields edge to edge. Anti-horse stakes are planted before the archers. Horn calls and standards bind units to one another. The timely order to withdraw sometimes has more value than the order to advance. What preserves lives is spacing, is the standing angle, is refusing to step across the invisible line between two squads. Those pleasing imaginings do not need to be erased, but they need to be set beside data and the experience of those who went to war. When you replace the dazzling spotlight with a warm even light, small details come forward. A stake line lies in the right place. A cord binds a spearhead fast, a helmet covers the neck, a wagon sits on the wrong verge. It is those seemingly small details that let us see how medieval people actually fought. And once we understand the small things, the big picture becomes brighter and fairer on its own. There is a stubborn notion that armour is so heavy the wearer can hardly move. Painters often choose a slow moment, thick gleam, a step that looks stuck. The record from fields and grass says otherwise. A standard harness of plate weighs several tens of kilograms, but the weight is evenly spread and the joints are supple. A soldier still climbs ladders, turns his body, runs short stretches, and mounts a saddle as usual. When shoved down, he can brace, kneel, and rise. The weak point is not bare weight, but stamina, the heat stored over long days, and the fact that armour cannot cover every joint. Another image puts the sword on the highest pedestal. The sword enters heraldry, song and oath. Yet on damp ground, the spear is the backbone of many infantry orders. The spear is cheap, longer than an arm span, and becomes a wall of points when men stand tight. Beside it is a whole row of polearms that can thrust, cut, and hook a foe from the saddle. The sword, therefore, is often the second weapon, drawn when ranks are glued together, when the gap is too tight for a long shaft to work. What decides the matter is the line, not the polished thing that dazzles in the hall. There is also the habit of thinking that bows and crossbows always pierce every armour. The truth depends on range, angle of impact, and the armour faced. Mail resist cuts well, but can lose to a strong arrow at short distance, especially when the head finds a gap. Plate is tighter, takes chops and thrusts better, yet still has thin places around armpits, groin, neck, and the sight slit. Hence archers do not only aim at men, they aim at horses, at gaps between shield and harness. At the moment, a hostile rank is changing step. The greatest effect of a rain of arrows often comes from the pounding tempo that disorders formation and spirit. A glaze of romance leaves the sense that a battle is an enlarged duel. Two persons crash together, the stronger wins, and a whole wing collapses accordingly. On the ground, signals and orders are the cords that keep things from coming apart. Standards show where units are. Horns and drums announce the beat to shift, to halt, to fall back. Soldiers work to hold distance from the man beside them, not from coldness, but because distance decides guard angle and line of thrust. One person can blaze for a heartbeat, but a tangled file drags a wing askew, and then a whole front phrase. There is also the idea that knights always fight mounted. Many campaigns show them dismounting to work with infantry, especially where the ground is tight, mud deep, forest close, or the front is lined with stakes. Then they fight as heavy foot, hold position, take the blow, and counter when the foe stumbles. By contrast, light cavalry with thinner kit proves useful elsewhere. Scouting, raiding wagon trains, cutting supply roads. Flexibility comes from how you use people, not from the emblem painted on the shield. In many stories, boiling oil appears as a standing weapon on the walls. The image is strong and easy to recall. In many places the record shows stones, timber, hot sand, lime, water, anything at hand that helps. Oil is precious and hard to store. An effective defence rests on structure ditch, thick curtain, angle towers, narrow arrow slits, sally ports for sudden sorties and quick returns. The fight on the wall is the fight of ladders, shields, grapnels, and relief in turn, not of a waiting vat of holy liquid. A quieter misconception claims that most soldiers were a spontaneous mob. In truth, there were many ladders of organisation, from early feudal levy to paid professional units, from town militia to bands of mercenaries. Discipline and training appear in each place in its own way. Longbowmen must train from youth. Smiths forge helmets, strap harness, tune cords, all in repetitive work bound to the standards of each region. Formations hold because everyone knows his place and task. That is not a crowd, that is a machine assembled from human beings. We should also speak of the frame where an afternoon's battle changes fate as a nation wheels after a fanfare. Such milestones exist, but the substance of war lies in long spans. Sieges entangle harvests, pestilence, and stores. A fortress fails for want of water, for spirits worn thin after long nights, for supply trains cut many days' march away. On the map, retreat roads and river crossings carry weight no less than the flag atop the wall. Finally, there is the notion that soldiers always seek glory. Many go for duty, for pay, for food. They endure hunger, cold, fatigue, and waiting. They stitch shoes, dry bowstrings, mend coats. They share hard bread and salted meat. When they step into the ranks, they need a cool head no less than a hot heart. It is a beauty that wins few cheers, yet endures. The imagined layers just named are not without cause. They are born from poetry, from the stage, and from the need for a clear axis of story. But when those frames are set beside the details of formation, of armour, of bow and spear, the listener will see a fuller picture. The next part will touch the sources of these myths in literature and art, to see why collective memory prefers coloured light to mud and rain. Some believe that archers are simply peasants, handed bows and marched along. That picture forgets an important truth. The longbow needs years of practice, shoulders and chest shaped in a special way, a string so heavy that a novice struggles to draw to full length. In many places, practice is a weekly habit of the community. It is an accrued skill, not something used on a whim. Hence the strength of a line of bows comes from discipline, tempo and command, not merely from numbers. There is also the thought that once gunpowder appears, armour becomes obsolete at once. History moves by small, slow steps. Early handguns are heavy, slow to load, and short-ranged. Plate armour remains useful for a long time until the new weapon settles. On the battlefield, many units continue to combine long spears, bows and crossbows, and polearms, while firearms gradually slip into the ranks. The change is like a quiet, certain current, not a flood that strips the land in one night. There is also a frame that city walls always fall quickly before stone throwers. In truth, a siege depends on soil, stone, rain, and dust. The trebuchet opens cracks, but the attacker needs ladders, needs saps, needs relief in turn. Behind the wall stand storehouses, wells, postern gates to sally and return. Many gates open not because stones hit a perfect seam, but because grain is gone and resolve is worn down. Decision comes from endurance and supply, not only from the thunder of a rock on Ashlar. Another mistake is that a knightly charge cannot be stopped. The weight of horse and long lance is fearsome on dry ground with room to run, and with the foe still loose. But in light woods, on mud, or before a stake line, that rush loses force. Infantry with spears and poleaxes, standing right, lowering shields and holding tight, will scatter the point and halt it. Winning and losing lie in choosing ground and choosing time. Not only in courage, many tales treat the sword as the answer to every range. On the ground, every distance has its proper tool. At far reach stand bow and crossbow. At middle reach come spear and pike. When pressed close, then two-handed axe, mace and sword. An effective soldier is not the one with the prettiest weapon, but the one who changes his tool at the right moment. That is a pragmatic art, low in glitter yet life-saving. Some think the violence of that age was lawless and unruled. In truth, discipline is the skeleton that lets formations exist. Orders to halt, to advance, to wheel, all ride on flags, horns, and drums. Violations can be punished hard, even amid confusion. Rules for sharing rations, turning the watch, and keeping distance are repeated every day. Without small habits, there can be no long campaigns. Another misunderstanding is that civilians stand outside the curtain of war. When armies pass, villages suffer levies, houses become billets, ferries are controlled, markets are broken, taxes rise to feed the cost of war, pestilence follows in the soldiers' steps. War is therefore not only the place where two lines meet, but a broad shadow cast on economy, harvest, and family. It is also easy to treat Europe's map as a single stage. Each region has its own habits. Some favour the crossbow, others lean on the longbow. Some are valleys, others gentle hills, others thick forest and tight rivers. Kit, training methods, and marching tempo shift with soil and season. Forcing everything into one mould erases local character, which is the key to understanding strategy and tactics. Lastly comes the matter of glory. Songs remember the names of a few, but endurance is the work of the many. The smith who fits a plate, the leather worker who cuts straps, the carter who hauls hard bread and drives cattle with the column, the sentry who stands a wet watch. Those links are ordinary and quiet, yet they are exactly the reason a wing of soldiers still has strength when the deciding day arrives. Cold stone hall, lamplight from oil lanterns washes over the woven tapestries. Upon them, horseborne knights race across open fields, lances levelled, banners straining in the chill wind. That is the image many remember of medieval war. It was born of embroidery, mural, song, and courtly pageant, not wholly invented, yet a glossy coat laid over a ground far more uneven. The first source of that sheen is rite and ceremony. Courts require solemn forms to legitimize power. The dubbing of a knight unfolds before nobles and clergy. The recipient kneels, a sword is laid upon the shoulder, oaths sound through the hall, chapel bells carry a long note. Ceremony creates a moral mould, declaring that the knight protects the weak and keeps faith with his lord. As ritual hardens into habit, the radiant figure of the knight steps away from the mud of the field, enters a sacred space, and every stain is veiled by incense and brocade. At the same time, outdoor stages and jousts rise like fairs. A village feast, a market day, a great house's wedding, any of these can bring scaffolds and stands. A joust is not the battlefield, yet it gathers exactly what is easiest to see. Hoofbeats, steel on steel, coloured pennons, capes with heraldry. Blows are arranged to be safer, yet loud enough that the crowd holds its breath. Spectators go home carrying a complete tale in which courage has a face and glory has its music. That tale is repeated by the wine seller and the minstrel, then spreads into the region's imagination. Painting and tapestry keep feeding the image. A workshop embroiders for many months to make one great hanging. The patron wants his house's arms gleaming at the centre, so his knight appears in the finest instant. Seat steady, the lance straight as a white thread. No one wishes to pay for a wall piece that shows men stumbling in mud, sweat pooling inside helms, or the disorder when a horse wheels. The tapestry therefore chooses the ideal instant, freezes a private truth, then hangs in the great hall where guests see it first. Every feast, every reception is another retelling of the wall story without a word. There are poets who go from castle to castle. They sing of honour, of distant quests, of vows under the moon. This song has a tune that clings to memory, a refrain for listeners to join. Each stanza packs a small enchantment, polishing a shield, making a helmet bloom with halo. When the song is copied, it travels farther than the minstrel's road. A reader in a remote priory hears the very same beat, feels the same blade cut the air. Over time, those letters thicken into a curtain that stands between the hearer and the reality of the field. Courts and nobles need more than pretty tales. They need a language by which to tell themselves. Chroniclers are hired to set down victories, to explain that a failed campaign was due to rain, to mire, to season, and that a successful one was won by cunning and courage. Dynastic histories have discipline and sequence, yet also blind corners. Camp disorder, fights over rations, withdrawals in the night, these are rarely copied. The page keeps what profits the ruler. In this way, the knight's image is polished once more by script. Religion adds half the light. Holy bones, relics, and charms are carried in pockets. When an army marches under a saint's banner, each soldier's burden becomes spiritual. The banner in the wind, together with prayers before departure, turns them into players inside a script larger than themselves. On church altars, paintings show this just defeating the wicked. Those images pour into daily life, then flow back toward the field, a closed loop sustaining belief. Great civic processions have their part as well. City gates open, drums beat a slow measure, king or lord rides through the streets, balconies hang cloth, children throw flowers. On such days the streets become a backdrop for a review, and every suit of mail shines like a mirror. Smiths stand in the crowd, listen to steel kiss steel, and know that in their forges those plates are heavy, hot, and easily bent. Yet as the parade passes, the fussy details of labour vanish. The crowd sees only the even cadence and the hoof on stone. Taste cannot be ignored. Century to century the beautiful shifts, yet the love of order and symmetry endures. A straight line of ranks, a row of parallel flags, a deep blue ground laid behind, these quiet the eye. Artists choose such compositions because they soothe the gaze. Buyers choose them because they soothe the memory. Taste pushes art toward order, while war, in many days, admits no order but the shout and the dust. The gap between liking and truth opens, then is slowly filled by layered tellings. There are subtler channels. Royal edicts stipulate dress in the field, colours of flags, the place for the standard bearer. Rules make the spectacle uniform, and uniformity strikes hard. When a single-coloured host marches in, people remember the colour first and only then the stains. Collective memory prefers hue to grime. Later, in the retelling, colour goes first, mud goes last, and by degrees mud is gone. In the forge, a blade is quenched in water. The hiss lingers. The smith watches a pale blue ripple run along the surface, knows the steel is set. He does not tell of the bruise on his shoulder from checking the hammer, nor of shards stuck in his palm. He hands the sword to the buyer, wipes off the oil, holds it through the lamp's glow. In that instant the blade becomes a slender line of light. When it leaves the shop, the line of light goes down the lane and is easily carved into the memory of someone at a balcony. That memory later turns into a phrase, the blade bright as water. The phrase is used again and again and becomes another brick in the wall of myth. In a noble house's treasury, a keeper lifts the lid of an oak chest. Inside lie a cloak embroidered with arms, a sword belt, a signet, and a few relics in silver boxes. Each object has gathered its own tale. When a young man touches the belt, he hears his elders tell of a fight where his grandfather held firm. Objects link stories between generations, breaking time into flashes. Those flashes are mostly victories, while the long months of hauling stone, digging ditches, waiting for pay and cleaning camp have no tokens to cling to. Legend chooses the lit places. Sometimes the light is music. Hand drums beat a steady rhythm in the castle yard. Brass holds a long note and the flag climbs the pole. Music can bind feet into one stream, can turn a scattered group into a rank. When a melody weds a banner every time the horn speaks, the collective memory opens to the same page. The real battle, when it comes, is more confused. Yet the memory page keeps its ruled lines. Later, when a survivor goes home, it is the horn he recalls whole. The tale marches after the horn and keeps straight. The voices of city scribes contribute as well. Later printers gather songs, copy them clean, stitch spines. A reader in a tavern turns the page to find a gallop, a clash. The best-selling passages are always the fastest beats. In the next edition, the printer trims the part about preparing stores and shoring bridges, and adds pages of chases and clashes. Selection grows ever keener. Through many printings, the story is pared down to sinew. The reader no longer sees sweat drip and fingers split, only rearing horses and flying cloaks. When such layers of telling stack, another kind of reality is raised upon the earth. It is not wrong in every small detail, for the true field also has steel, banners, and oaths. The difference lies in frequency and span. In tapestry and book, the brilliant moment lasts and lasts, while in a soldier's life that moment is brief, a single flare that dies. Legend stretches a lightning flash into daylight, and everyone lives beneath that sun. Night air slides along the tapestry's edge. The wool strands tremble. On the cloth surface, the horses never tire, the banners never slacken, no mud has time to stick. Outside the great hall, the yard is damp and cold, and boot prints chip at the edges. Inside, the wall tells of a clean and predictable war, while beyond it, reality still stirs. The distance between the two is the place where myth blooms, slow and lasting under the soft light of oil lamps. In the room of hangings, oil flames skip lightly across the cloth. There, siege ladders stand straight. Shield bearers climb rungs as if the timbers had never slipped. The gate cracks open for a beat. Colours change in an instant, as if a curtain had just been switched. All is arranged handsomely and quiet. No earth collapses, no stones miss their mark, no misstep from weary legs. The painting preserves the instant that memory wants to keep, while lime dust and the smell of smoke drift out of frame. Beyond the hall, Attorney Day begins. Turf is level, rails are straight, two knights thunder along parallel lines. The weapon strikes the boss dead centre and the lance bursts into bright strips. It is a sight that draws a tide of applause. The bout has judges, rules, and a call to stop. The loser unlatches his helm, rises, brushes off dust. It is not a battlefield, but the image is too perfect to avoid repeating in speech. When night falls, the minstrel will recount that same charge, that same spray of wood, that same cheer. The loop begins there. In the workshops, a painter chooses composition as a tailor chooses stitching. He places a flag to break an empty patch, draws a line of light along a blade, lifts a helm half a finger so the calm face shows. On the wall, the painting needs no wind and no mud. Her calm face persuades better than 1,000 lines about fatigue. Every time the picture travels from one hall to another, those choices go with it and become a standard for what war should look like. Manuscripts and studies have their own rules. Prose favours balanced cadence, names and places arranged in order. Chronicles mark months and thrones and lords, while the long weeks of watch duty, rampart work, and wood gathering appear rarely. When a broken gate must be mentioned, the copy chooses a clipped verb. When a retreat must be told, the copy chooses a reason polite to crown and court. Sentence structure and taste for neat phrasing blur the rough edges and leave an impression of trim and clean. Religion adds a warm ring of light. A saint's sign fixed to a spearhead, a verse spoken before departure, a charm sewn beneath a tunic. These make an unseen moat around recollection. When the tale is told, the bell and the prayer are recalled first, then the mud. No one sets out to invent. It is only that memory takes the road it knows, where the bell leads and frankincense veils the sweat. The town has printers, taverns, and a market corner where a storyteller stands on a barrel. The crowd likes fast beats, likes hoof thunder, likes steel shine. The teller knows his audience. Next time he trims the toil, adds more pursuit. The tale grows slimmer, like a sword ground many times until only the brightest part remains. In a few market seasons, a fresh motif becomes habit. A night rushes by, a gate swings open, victory falls like a summer rain. In a great house's armoury, an old harness hangs on a wooden frame. A small dent at the lower rib, a long scratch across the shoulder. Each mark has a true story, yet when displayed in the hall the harness is more emblem than witness. Guests touch the cooled metal, imagine horns and banners. Few think of the weight or the strap biting the throat. Objects cast their own halo, and that halo wraps every rough corner. There are miniatures that depict a siege like a chessboard. Ladders align, sappers are laid out in neat squares. The stone thrower sits in perfect line to batter the corner. The whole frame looks like a strategy diagram. The aim is to transmit a feeling of control. The viewer sees war tutored by ruler and square. Look long enough and one believes that walls always fall at the proper angle, that soldiers always stand in the right spot. That gaze travels far into later centuries, where film sets rebuild the very layouts that the miniatures taught. When cinema appears, light is driven by lamps, movement is shortened, conflict is pressed into 3 acts. The camera seeks strong lines, cavalry enters from the frame's left, lance head to the lens, dust trails behind. It is a sensible language for images, and it repeats an old choice to put glory at the centre. Viewers leave the theatre carrying the same pulse as those who watched a joust many centuries ago. What differs are the cuts and the colours, while the bright coat is equally durable. Houses need stories to lengthen honour. A defeat is framed as a lesson, a victory as destiny. Children grow with nights of listening each night another shining detail. As adults they stand before the tapestry and read the past of their house as if it were a pictorial genealogy. In this way, myth does not descend from outside. It grows within the home from the need to preserve a single image of the ancestors. In market streets, cloth sellers, cobblers, and swordsmiths all profit when tales of glory circulate. A new dye is paired with a regiment. A hat pattern is named for a great house. The bridge between war and trade turns beauty into merchandise. Goods need labels. Labels need emblems. Emblems must be simplified so all can know them at a glance. After a single fair season, the emblem reigns and detail falls away. Legend lasts because it is neat, and because it sells. The eye's preferences are invisible craftsmen too. The eye favours straight lines, steady rhythms, hard contrasts. Hence the head on charge of horses has a native pull, while ditch digging to a hauling rope and raising roofs are small slow motions that repeat. The eye slides past the slow part and stops at the quick. Over time, the quick survives in memory and the slow fades into ground. Not because it matters less, but because it impresses less at once. Survivors do their own selecting. By a fire they tell of one rear of a horse, of one jolt of helm against shield. Those are bright points that fit easily into words. The days under rain awaiting a signal that never came. The long weeks gathering wood and water. These rarely become sentences. Memory favours whatever has a beat. Stories with a beat harden into legend. Beatless ones dissolve into silence. In later textbooks, a chapter on medieval war often opens with a map, and then an illustration. The map is neat, the picture neat. A battle is compressed to a few arrows and a few colours. Each arrow stands for thousands of footsteps, each colour for many kinds of mud. Pupils learn quickly and teachers speak easily. In time, those arrows and colours become the very way the heart imagines war. That tidiness suits the classroom and quietly pulls collective memory toward the smooth. At times, a ruler must shore up authority after a loss. The bulletin speaks of an orderly withdrawal and of preserving strength for the next campaign. Words are carefully chosen to avoid brushing the true fatigue of the host. Years later, a historian compiles from the bulletin, and later, still others quote the history. The provisional diction of one campaigning season becomes lasting masonry. The fortress of myth is built of such bricks, square and easy to set. A different linguistic habit matters too. Writers favour paired words, like honour and courage, attack and defence, light and dark. Balance makes a sentence pleasing and easy to read aloud. The field rarely balances. It tilts. It snaps. It turns. When the line invites couples again and again, the reader imagines that reality also holds steady scales. Hear such prose long enough and the heart trusts the unbroken line. Victory days in the city always bring parades. Flags line the streets, drums beat a steady pulse, the host passes to cheers. At the end of the column comes a siege engine taken apart and hauled on a cart. It is large, rope-laced, wheel heavy. As it rolls through town, it becomes a prop. Children see only what is sturdy and fine. No one sees the axle change in a bog or the rope break in the rain. The city turns hardship into a display. In a monastery, a copyist diligently writes down an old century's song. He keeps the refrain, polishes a few outdated words, adds a place name to suit current readers. Such small updating lets the song live for a new generation while keeping its old mould. Everyone feels at home and thinks it fresh. That feeling of familiar newness lengthens legend's life like a flame fed with a little oil. There is always a blur between what is seen and what is later told. A man on the wall sees the court before the gate. A man in the far field sees a stand of trees. A man in the spear line sees only the back of a comrade's tunic. Each position captures one frame. When the stories meet in a tavern, frames stack, bright parts overlap and dark parts are erased. No one sets out to deceive. The table merely seeks a common picture to nod to together. That common picture usually chooses the good light. Layer by layer, oaths, songs, tapestries, miniatures, chronicles, film sets, parades, and habits of phrasing have laid the foundation of perception. Myth stands not outside history. It rests upon a real kernel, then amplifies the fast beats, softens the slow beats, draws the straight line clearly, and hides the kinked. When night is gentle, in the great hall, the lamp flame still trembles, silhouettes still drift on the wall, and the voice in the listener's head keeps even time. Behind that smooth telling, the ground of war lies quiet and muddy, waiting to be seen a little closer. A draught slips through the stone hall, a candle tilts, and figures on the tapestry quiver as if alive. In the room's centre, an old suit of armour hangs still. Grey steel throws back tiny flames. Every passerby looks up into the closed visor and imagines a horn and a straight thrust. A few faint scratches on the pauldrons tell another tale, yet the horn inside the viewer's head often drowns it. Legend is strong because it knows how to choose light. When a festival opens, Astum stands rise high, flags hang down the streets. A mailed knight steps out with a caparisoned horse. The city only sees the steady stride of the hooves and a lance straight as a candle. The sweat beneath the gambeson and the leather straps scored into the neck do not enter the frame. The bout has a judge, a cheer, a wreath. Such trimness suits memory. The teller need only keep the beat, swap banner names and house names, and there is a new tale that feels familiar. Behind the walls, the scriptorium's hand copies make a voice that outlasts the fairground drum. Prose like symmetry, favours ranked names. A long campaign is cut to a few lines. A siege is gathered into 3 sentences. Victory is written plain, defeat written roundabout. Such diction smooths the ruptures of reality as if water had been drawn over the surface. Passing through a careful scribe's hands for more centuries, each recopying files another rough edge flat. Power needs a picture to unite around. A house's pedigree recites coloured shields, fine horses, and the sword handed down. The victory feast chooses the main street for its parade. The siege engine, its ropes loosened, sits prim on a cart and rolls through flags and music. A heavy instrument becomes stage property. Splintered timbers, snapped ropes, or a broken axle in a bog do not appear in the right. Through many seasons of festival, the ceremonial image becomes a common denominator. People accept it as a truth easy to keep. The preferences of eye and ear both contribute. The eye loves straight lines and clear contrast. The ear loves steady metre and refrain. Therefore a frontal cavalry rush marks more deeply than trench work. The ring of sword on shield sounds louder than the gasp for breath. Over times, as bright and loud survive, slow and dogged fade. No one intends to forget. Memory simply takes the smoothest road. Royal art lays on another leaf of gold. The painter sets the knight near the centre, pushes the mass to the edge, lines the siege ladders neatly, tilts the stone thrower to please the frame. A warm light falls on the cross atop the spear. The painting achieves what the field seldom grants. Everything stands in place. The old tapestry becomes a yardstick for imagination. Walk into the next room, see another piece much the same, and the viewer believes that is how war goes. Bookstalls and stages keep legends beat when the harvest is done. A teller stands on a barrel, claps time with his hand, recites the names of houses, captains and towns. Each telling adds spice at the spot listeners like. One charge is drawn out for a few more beats. One lowering of a flag is set within the drum's roll. The long stretches of gathering stores, building depots, and strengthening earthworks are cut so the tale does not trip. Next season a different teller learns the piece, keeps the beat, changes a few names, and legend moves on. When woodcut printing spreads, pictures travel faster than a courier horse. A battle is reduced to a few clean cuts. One side's flag is a cross, The others are fleur-de-lis. Arrows showing attack divide the page into clear blocks. Those sheets cost less than tapestry and go farther than a song. In many modest homes, people see war for the first time. They trust the precise straight lines on paper. In time, woodcut composition becomes the default language of shared memory. Religion wraps the story in comfort. Before marching out, there are prayers. On return, there are candles and incense. Survivors retell a storm of arrows by starting with the bell. Every listener nods. The comfort is not false, yet it leans memory toward meaning and light and away from sweat and mud. When prayer and charm stay in the story, many of the ordinary day's dark corners have no room. The state must send bulletins. Letters after a campaign choose careful words. The army withdrew in order. Stores were preserved. Reasons are given. Such a report is used for history's court in later years. The language made for one season's needs turns into lasting stuff. The walls of legend rise by another course. Cities and merchant companies learn to trade with images. A cloth hue is tied to a brigade. A helm style is tied to a family name. A kind of boot takes the name of a victory. War's beauty enters the shop. Goods need clear emblems to sell. Emblems must be simplified so all can know them. That cycle removes the complex. Glamour thrives in the market. The cumbersome detail does not. Modern film does not break the line. It only changes tempo, light, and sound. The camera seeks crisp outlines, smoke and dust are managed just so. The score draws the heart to run with the hooves. A single frame is arranged to be complete. That completeness fits the taste of old miniatures. The audience leaves with a chain of images bright, tight, and strong, set in the centre of the chest. In the store of memory, that chain takes its place quickly. One plain fact must be noted. The scraps of a soldier's daily life seldom endure. A ration list, a tally of stakes, a few lines about a night of rain. Army papers grow wet, ink fades, pages fall away with the years. Tapestries and songs, because they are lovely and dear, are kept. Thus what lasts tends to be what was handsome from the start. Sources are not neutral in their survival. They choose sides for memory while still in the chest. Legend gains force from great names who can tell. A poet chooses one knight as the emblem of an age's virtues. A chronicle chooses one battle as the mark of a reign. Later readers want milestones to steer by. The brighter the milestone, the darker the verge. Everything that falls into that dark verge is treated as secondary, though the secondary is what there was most of. By now, the picture of legend's sources is sharp enough to show a rule. Glamour does not spring from one single lie. It comes from many small choices, repeated. Each choice seems harmless. Choose a handsome angle for a painting. Choose a smooth beat for a song. Choose a concise phrase for a copy. Choose a right for the street. 100 such choices join to form a current. The current carries the viewer to the same shore, where banners and dark horses always hold the finest place. What remains is to set two pictures side by side. One is what the eye prefers, one is what the earth recorded. Look long enough and one sees they do not cancel each other. The glow has a real core. One cavalry rush can decide a field. One drawn sword can alter a fate. Yet that is a thin slice. Beneath it lies a whole slab. That slab is mud and rain and discipline and sharpened stakes and rope and hard bread and orders and the role of the missing. Once we understand why collective memory tilts toward the light, listening to the ground becomes easier. There is no need to deny the song or pull down the tapestry. We need only step a little closer to the earth. There the ring of steel is not as loud as the breath of the men carrying ladders. The incense softens to make room for sweat. The straight line of the drawing loosens into the kinked line of a true formation. The candle in the great hall still flickers and the light on armour still shifts, leaving the room of hangings. Your footfalls on stone carry away what you have seen and what you lacked time to see. The legend stays on the wall. Outside lies the broad yard, the path to the granary, the river route for supply boats, the night mud before a storm. The medieval war shows itself at its proper pace, slow and durable, made of many small repeated tasks, with few blazing instants, yet just enough to be hung up and sung forever. Morning mist settles lightly on the ground. Across an open strip of fields, spear shafts line up as straight as plough furrows. Metal touches metal in small even sounds, unhurried. To the naked eye, the host ahead is not a scatter of lone figures, but a single large body, with breath and bones and working muscles. That skeleton is organisation. In the early medieval centuries, feudal obligation determined most of the way an army was summoned to the field. Each lord, upon receiving the call, brought his household and retainers to the rendezvous. Among those who came were men of means whose mail shirts shone under the sun, and men who carried only a thick jacket and a wooden shield. Some were at home on horseback, some walked in rough shoes. The disparity showed at once on the training ground. Skill in shooting and thrusting was uneven, bowstrings differed, spear lengths did not match. Service terms were short and tied to the farming calendar. When the fields called, many asked leave to depart. A commander had to join all these loose pieces into one plane that could bear weight. He taught spearmen to hold distance, shieldmen to lock shoulders, archers to shoot on the count. A crowd at first in disorder straightened into ranks. Halting first steps turned into a common stride. At the centre of the yard, the knight appears like a pillar. A knight is not made in one season. From boyhood, a noble learns to ride, to balance, to couch the lance at the right height, to lower his body and cover his chest while turning the horse. His family invests in a war horse, tack, armour, grooms, smiths, leather workers. A knight's day is a chain of repeated motions. Check the reins, feel the boots, set the helm, practice the lance on grass. Year after year habit becomes reflex. When battle comes, the knight brings more than armour and a sword. He brings along discipline and a small group that moves with him. In a feudal host, the knight is a spine beside the heavily equipped men-at-arms, riders who can dismount, hold a gap, and keep fragile spaces from breaking. The picture does not stand still. As kings grew stronger and campaigns lengthened, as garrisons, sieges, and long marches became normal, courts needed troops who could work without pause. Paid soldiers appeared. They signed terms, drew wages, drew rations. Professional mercenary companies formed, especially in rich city lands such as the Italian communes. They brought the discipline of a trade, or even skill, the habit of changing formation at the right moment. Their presence altered the tone of drill. Orders grew shorter, lines kept straighter. The familiar gaps of a feudal levy were slowly filled. In flourishing towns, urban militias enter the frame. Smiths, tanners, weavers, merchants mustered by guild. They didn't leave the streets for long, yet they knew how to guard a gate, patrol a wall walk, cock a crossbow behind a pavis, drop stones when an enemy came close. On ordinary days they worked in shops. On dangerous days they carried the arsenal's weapons. Their work rhythm was practical and steady. It lacked ornament and it endured. Despite the knight's honoured place, infantry made up the greater part of any host. They formed the load-bearing plane. They held ground, held roads, held gates, held the space between the standard and the foe. Among them, the common sight was a man with spear and shield. The left hand held the shield pressed to the shoulder, the right gripped the shaft. Spearheads pointed forward and joined the neighbouring rank into a living hedge. Their rules of practice sound simple. Keep the line. Keep the measure. Plant your feet at the right time. Step back in time. Cover your face when arrows fall. Lower spearheads when horses come on. It is these plain lessons that keep the whole block alive. Behind the spear hedge the bowstring snaps. Archers are the breath of long reach. Many have hunted since youth, with shoulder and back grown by years of drawing. They read the wind and time their breathing. On signal they drive stakes into the ground before them, stand behind the stakes and shoot on command. Flights of arrows spread across the sky like fine rain. Their power lies less in one shaft than in the steadiness of the whole volley. In some hosts the longbow becomes the main weapon at distance. Longbowmen's arms grow unusually hard. Their shoulders thicken month by month. A big sheaf rides on the back. Slanted stakes are set ahead. When enemy horse advances, the stakes force the charge to fan out and open a narrow lane where arrows can be poured. The set of bow and stake is a lesson learned by heart. Beside the bow stands the crossbow. Crossbowmen carry stock, string, spanning gear, short heavy bolts. They shoot more slowly yet strike harder, useful against good armour or stubborn posts. On an assault line, crossbowmen often crouch behind pavises. Tall shields stood upright. One group shoots while another spans, turn by turn like a wheel. They move forward in short bounds. Their footprints make a steady pattern on the ground, not the mark of panic. When the distance closes, polearms speak. The bill with its hook, the halberd with axe blade and spike, the glaive with a long edge, the pike with a very long shaft. These do not rely on one handsome cut. They rely on leverage and on pulling, blocking, wrenching, parrying. The user learns to hook a horse's neck aside, knock a shield edge, twist an enemy spear to open a narrow gap. A few beats later, a comrade behind presses into the opening. It is work for wood and steel, for shoulder and hip, without show and without noise, yet it works. In tight hand-to-hand space, two-handed infantry are the striking hammer. Greatswords, two-handed axes, and two-handed hammers aim at weak points in the line. They chop at enemy shafts to cut the hedge and make a door. They need comrades to cover them because they stand exposed. They step one beat forward, half a beat back, change the angle of the stroke, hold the cadence so they do not drift from the block. A formation needs only a few of these in the right place to change the bearing strength of the whole front. Men-at-arms often hold the key places. They are the folds between blocks, the short wall that covers the standard, the nail that fixes a thin spot. When needed, they dismount, raise shields, take spears, line up with foot. Good armour lets them endure a few more breaths. In deciding moments, a few breaths are a wing of battle. On the outer edge rides light cavalry. Lightly equipped and quick, they are the army's eyes and ears. They scout roads, read dust on the horizon, pick up rumour from the woodline, and return to mark the foe. In a fight, they skim along a flank, cast javelins, shoot, and fray the enemy's edge. In victory, they harry so the enemy cannot rally. In defeat, they cover the rear, draw pursuers away from the main body, and help the rest close ranks. All these layers do not stand alone. They interlock by soft rules. Bows need stakes. Stakes need time to drive. Spearmen buy that time. Spearmen stand firm because men-at-arms are behind them. Men-at-arms hold because they trust light horse on the flank. Light horse live because archers know to shoot over their heads. Each group sees its task in the other's eyes, and that sight breeds the calm of a well-ordered host. In a typical drill, the commander plants 3 flags on the field. He calls them centre, left, right. There is no need for many terms so long as each block understands itself relative to a flag. Orders come short. Files dress as if pulled tight by cord. Archers step forward and set stakes. Spearmen move behind the bow line. Men-at-arms wedge into the join between blocks. Light horse skim to the edges, ride parallel for a stretch, and wheel in a wide arc. They repeat until the distance between one man and the next is always the same, and the motions of shooting and covering, advancing and retiring, relieving and resting flow as easily as breathing. Toward evening the practice shifts to broken drills. Knights dismount and rank with the foot, learning to stand under a rain of practice arrows. Billmen learn to hook a rival's shield without catching a comrade. Crossbowmen learn to shoot from behind pavises, change places fast, and leave a gap that the next group can fill. It is like raising a big roof, each person lifting a beam at the proper time. If one is late, the ridge goes awry. No one wants a crooked roof. The move from scattered feudal levies to paid companies shows itself not only in payroll, it shows in a shared rhythm. A soldier on wages knows he will stay through the rains. Commander dares to plan longer. Skills deepened. Archers train stable angles, learn to correct for gusts, learn to count together so the whole line looses as one. Spearmen learn to shift from wide front to narrow without breaking. Halberdiers learn to work with shieldmen. Light horse learn to steer by flags rather than chase dust. None of this happens in a single harvest. It takes time and many nights by the fire. Urban militias act as joints between field and daily life. They're good at holding walls and gates and know every step of their own parapets. They know when the wind changes on the battlements and where a palisade will stand without the gust toppling it. They know where the armoury is and which alleys move men fastest between 2 towers. When the field army comes back to the walls worn down, the militia opens at the right beat and covers the retreat. It is a quiet kind of cooperation and tight. In a well-ordered army, the roster of tasks is always clear. Not a sheaf of fussy papers, rather a set of phrases that has become habit. Spear block holds the centre. Bows cling to their stakes. Crossbows hold narrow ways. Billmen forward when distance drops below swinging room. Men-at-arms pin the thin spots. Light horse keep the flank eyes. Knights wait for the right times in and out. Reserve stands where the roads are wide so it can move. The standard bearer holds the flag high enough for the wings to see. Horn and drum keep movement even inside the noise. Each signal is tied to a drilled action. When it sounds, people do what they have learned and do not hunt for words. As cold sets in, plate appears more often. This changes how files are combined. Men-at-arms who can bear blows longer take the sensitive places. Spearmen still hold the base yet learn to fill for each other when one arm tires. Skilled archers are assigned to shoot on a slant over the men-at-arms without making them flinch. Crossbowmen wait for an opening to shoot into joints. Billmen learn to aim at ties, at joints, at shafts. Everyone knows light horse will take a long loop to strike the proper angle rather than crowd into tight ground. A chain of small changes adds up to a stronger whole. On long marches the column goes in an order that keeps confusion down. Scouts on light horse first, then spear and shield, then bows and crossbows, then men-at-arms. Knights and the standard keep a central place so they can split toward either wing if needed. Militia march with the column near towns. Gaps between blocks are held so that if ambushed, the column can turn into a battle line in minutes. This is organisation seen on the road, not only on the field. The plain truth is that no single arm decides a battle by itself. Knights need a firm base so their charges do not meet traps. Archers need time to shoot. Spearmen need a brace when arms tire. Crossbowmen need a steady stance to span. Billmen need a crack to enter. Men-at-arms need relief. Light horse need clear loops to turn. Militia need gates that open and close on time. When each link sees the others, the whole chain works. Medieval force structure is therefore not a mere list of weapons. It is the way ordinary people work together. One person holds a wooden shaft in the right place. One looses a bowstring on the right beat. One plants a pavis square. One pulls a horse one step to the left. One lifts the flag a hand's breadth when the wind shifts. Each small detail preserves a pocket of safety for a comrade. The pockets join into a single day alive. By late afternoon the yard empties. Stakes are pulled from the soil. Pavises lean on the wall. Bowstrings are unstrung to rest. Crossbow strings are lowered so they do not wear. Men-at-arms wipe plates and oil straps. Knights walk their horses in slow circles to cool them. Spearmen set spearheads on boot tops and sit to breathe. The quartermaster notes arrow counts and stakes that need repair. Militia return the arsenal key to the ward officer. These small motions link today to tomorrow. Tomorrow the yard will be full again. The rhythm goes on. The steadiness is the secret of a strong army. In the wide viewedness, from scattered feudal duty, through paid ranks, to mercenary companies and town militias, organisation moves from household habit to professional discipline. Knights hold honour and shock. Infantry holds the foundation. Missile troops hold the far rhythm. Light horse hold eyes and ears. Militia hold doors and walls. They interlock through rules proved in mud and rain and in breaths drawn hard under helms. No slogans are needed. No fancy phrasing is needed. Each does the proper task, steadily and quietly. Then the army stands on the plain under a low sky and cold wind with a beauty that is hidden and durable. At first light, dew beads on straps still smelling of oil. In front of a low awning a soldier touches the padded jack, tries the crossbow latch, taps the helmet rim to hear if the ring is clear. These motions happen every day without noise, and they decide a life when weather turns or ground turns to sludge. The basic layer of protection is a thick padded coat. Linen or wool sewn in many layers wraps shoulder and torso, holds warmth, and soaks part of a cut. Over it a shirt of mail is hung. Tens of thousands of small rings linked together form a supple curtain that drapes with the body and covers shoulders, chest, and thighs. Mail is not bright and not ornate, but it is tough and easy to mend. The tear is stitched with fresh rings. The worn patch can be replaced as a unit. In close fighting it helps blades slide, wounds go less deep, and bones seldom shatter. Its faults are weight when wet and weak defence against heavy concentrated blows. For this reason the padding beneath matters greatly, like a soft mattress that blunts the metal strike. On the head a helmet stays with the soldier from first drill to the evening by the fire. Early forms are simple caps, later grown into bassinets and kin that protect head, cheeks, and neck better. A visor lifts and drops. The rim at the back stretches low over the nape. Many add a fall of mail for the neck and link it to the shirt so no seam is left open. Under a rain of arrows one only needs to tuck the chin and the shaft skids along the steel to the shoulder. When stones are thrown from a wall the extended rim takes the blow for the neck bones. A helmet makes no one invulnerable, yet it sharply reduces the chance of being felled by a stray rock or a blind arrow. Later, as capacity grows, plate armour appears and slowly reaches full form. A complete suit weighs about 15 to 25 kilograms, yet the load is spread by straps and joints. The wearer can run, kneel, turn hips, even climb. Smooth faces make axe and sabre glance aside and can turn arrows. Joints remain natural weak spots. Armpits, back of knee, throat, and lacing points are the places an enemy seeks. Hence shields are still needed. Shoulder angles still matter, and the discipline of moving in armour cannot be thrown away. Equipment only speaks when paired with the right tool. The sword is a familiar companion. It is like a key at the hip, drawn at close range when spear shafts tangle and crossbow work is too slow. It cuts and thrusts and changes hands easily. In a seasoned palm it clears a tight space, opens a gap, and lets the breath come even again. The sword bears emblematic weight. Yet on the field it rarely opens the act. It appears at the end of a clash when distance has shrunk to a single pace. From farther out, infantry spears make a wall. They are cheap to make, simple to teach, and effective only so far as the formation holds. The points of the first rank become a thorny band. Shafts tuck into armpits. The rear foot braces. When many ranks close together, horses balk at a blind run and footmen slow. The spear's strength lies along the width, not in a single gifted hand. A lone point is easily beaten. 100 even points are hard to bend. It is a weapon of the many and of discipline more than of the individual. In the hands of a mounted knight, the long lance works in a different way. Horse, rider, saddle, and armour throw weight into the tip. The charge opens a breach if it strikes a weak point. If the ground is firm, if the next ranks are ready to flood through, if any one condition slips, the edge is gone. The cavalry lance is a weapon of the moment. That moment must be prepared by a clear run, by long-range fire that has unsettled the foe, and it must be sealed by infantry feet. When the cogs mesh, the impact sounds like a drum. When one tooth is missing, the wind whistles through empty wood. At grappling range, polearms become drills. The halberd has a broad axe blade with a spike and often a hook to jerk shields or pull riders from saddles. The bill's slim hook drags a foe out of balance. The long pike checks horses and guides the block. The horseman's pick concentrates force in a single beak and seeks a joint. These rely on levers and on angles rather than neat sword lines. The user learns to change direction fast, to pull when pushed, to thrust when the enemy pulls, to parry and open a door for the comrade to the side. In a narrow lane with brick near the shoulder, a good halberdier often sets the pace. A mace differs. It does not cut and leaves no shining trail. It packs weight into one spot. Against mail it makes a deep bruise. Against plate a clean stroke can daze, steal breath, and loosen grips. This is a tool of persistence. True, the mace man rarely works alone. He goes with a partner who holds the foe at the front. When the target is fixed, the head falls true. The pair trust each other and move in step, forward and back, turning on a word. In many sieges, the crossbow becomes the spine of the firing line. Heavy draw slows rate, yet the payback is penetration and a steady aim. The pavis stands like a door and makes a moving shelter. The crossbowman spans under cover, pokes out to shoot, and drops to span again. In rain or high wind, bows lose stability while crossbows keep a fair rhythm. In the open, they combine with stakes and shield lines to make a slow, even fire that hunts armoured targets in tight clusters near the command flag. At the end of the period, gunpowder arrives in matchlocks and early handguns. At first they are few, clumsy, and slow to load. Even so, the bang and the black smoke make the enemy line falter for a beat. Fired alongside bow and crossbow, the handgun opens one more hole in the shield of habit. No one then perceives the whole future. They only see that the steel in the meadow will thin from this point. Time will favour fire. Each piece above matters only when set to its proper use. Mail suits those who must endure blows day after day. Plate suits deciding minutes that demand long endurance against focused force. Helm and neck curtain protect head and throat under arrows and falling stones. The sword clears close quarters. Infantry spears hold the foot of the line. The lance opens a door at the proper instant. Halberd and bill work in the clinch. Mace and pick aim at the hard spots. The crossbow keeps time against stubborn targets. The handgun warns that an old habit must yield. No item rules the field alone, and this is the nature of medieval war. Victory comes from the orchestra, not one instrument. Care shows use. At dawn, chin straps are checked knot by knot. Plate joints get a thin oil. Sword edges are wiped with a greasy cloth. Spear shafts are inspected for splinters. The halberd's head pin is tightened. Crossbow strings are checked for fray. Powder is dried. Match cords are kept out of damp. In a long line, one failure in the middle makes a hole. This is why dull camp chores are the hidden face of tactics. On the training ground, gear and motion come as pairs. A man in plate learns to drop weight onto his hips, to turn a shoulder into a blow, to kneel and rise without a wobble, The spear hand learns to raise, lower, plant, and pull on command, and to keep perfect distance from the next man so their points draw a single line. A billman learns to tear a shield free and to shove back when held. A crossbowman learns to keep span and fire behind a pavis without showing himself too long. A handgunner learns to bear recoil and stay calm when smoke hides the front. The point is not one fine flourish. The point is many people doing the same thing. Now set the gear inside terrain and the function stands out. In boggy ground, sharp stakes planted in front of the bows press the enemy into soft lanes. Mail helps a man keep balance when his feet sink. A bassinet protects the neck when arrows come slantwise from a forest edge. Infantry spears are lowered and make the attacker slow at the mud step. Crossbowmen shoot at the cluster where the stakes thin. When the enemy shuffles out of order, light horse sweep across to cast and then pull away before they mire. In narrow streets, the halberd and the mace take the lead. Swords clear one stair and one threshold at a time. Pavises stand against walls and crossbows fire over their edges when the enemy bends to lift a ladder. Stone steps check a horse's rush and make long lances useless. Here plate lets a soldier absorb the crush and stand up after each slam against a shield rim. In wide meadow the bow and crossbow open, and sharp stakes form a fan for cover. When the rain of arrows stops the enemy cold, the spear line steps half a pace and keeps its spacing. Cavalry uses the edge of a gap to strike aside. Plate saves the rider from hurried chops. Swords and maces have their true work only once the two fronts lock tight. In a siege, the pavese, crossbow, helmet, and neck mail earn their keep. At the foot of the wall, the ram crew stands under a rough shed, while crossbowmen hold heads down, and halberdiers wait by a postern to tip ladders. On the wall, mail and helmet skirt let a man bend, throw, and haul without fear of a spear from below finding a seam. If handguns are on the field, a few scattered shots do enough to break the rhythm of men raising ladders. A day ends with small care. Armour hangs where air moves. Helms are turned upside down to dry. Pavises lean at an angle so they do not warp. Crossbow strings are lowered and waxed. Sword edges are cleaned of dried mud. Gun barrels are dried and match cords warmed near a small fire. These things do not draw legend, yet without them tomorrow's rhythm will break. Set all the equipment side by side and it looks like a craftsman's kit. Each kind of armour guards one part of the body and one kind of moment. Each weapon is born to solve a certain distance and target. When a commander reads ground and wind and the cast of his force, he lays them where they fit. When a soldier understands the thing in his hand, he spends less strength and gains more effect. When both meet, the field grows quiet after the thudding, with the smell of oiled steel and a line of people who are still on their feet. No praise is needed and no sharp denial either. Weapons and armour in medieval hands are tools. They are chosen for use, kept so they do not fail tomorrow, and combined to fill each other's gaps. Seen this way, the picture of battle is less distant, less gaudy, clearer, and warmer to the hand. That is all, and it's enough to explain why these armies lasted through many seasons of mud and rain. Before dawn, the wall face darkens with dew and water traces a pale film on the big stones. Below, the ditch lies quiet like a band of lead. From far off comes the light knock of dry wood and then silence, as if someone were measuring by ear. Before a wall, the air is denser than usual. Everything slows and tightens as if a rope bound to the fate of the country behind the stones had been pulled. Medieval war is rarely settled by a single blazing charge in an open field. Control of land, grain, and river lanes rests in thick walls, in gates shut at the right time, in stores laid up the season before. Siege is therefore the mode of struggle that carries most strategic weight. An army fights not only people, but stone and wood and water and time. A day in the fields can change a campaign's tempo. Yet weeks before, a wall decide the harvest of a year. To besiege a town, the attacker builds a stage filled with tools. The simplest is the ladder. Straight timber is hewn, rung holes cut evenly, rungs lashed tight. Under falling arrows, a ladder bites the parapet with a dry hiss of wood on stone. The first man up has a few breaths to find a grip where fingers can catch the lip of an arrow slit, or a seam between two blocks. If the ladder is shoved, the whole file drops in a single beat. If it holds, hands reach for the coping above and helmet rims wrap stone. Ladders are direct, cheap, and often soaked with sweat. The main gate asks for a different beat. In front of the doors, the ram appears like a long tree with an iron head. With each strike, the whole trunk shudders. Palms grow hot with friction. Thick planks jump, bars squeal, chips shower down. To let the ram work, the attacker needs a rough roof to stop arrows falling from high above. The blows must be even and not rushed because gates seldom break neatly as in pictures. When hinges give, no one knows what trap waits past the wood, a pit, a barricade, or a second door. The siege tower lifts the contest upward. It is a timber house on wheels, as high as or higher than the wall, its outside soaked to resist fire. Climbing inside, the soldier hears wheels roll on dirt, nails tap steadily, and arrows thud into boards. When the top platform kisses the parapet, a bridge drops and two planes join in a breath. That is the deciding moment. A narrow bridge, two files, edge to edge. Hold the bridge and the breach opens. If the bridge breaks, the tower backs away, and the whole file must begin again. From a distance, stone throwers write arcs in the sky. A mangonel or onager hurls big blocks, sometimes pots of earth, sometimes other heavy loads. Each cast makes the frame shiver and ropes sway while the crew steps back by habit. Accuracy is not the only aim. What matters is a steady pounding on the same section, and a rhythm that wears out the garrison's will. Later, with counterweights, the trebuchet gives a smoother path and harder blow. A long arm drops, the weight falls, stone leaps high and comes down on a point taken by eye and by experience. Its sound is not sharp but heavy, pressing the air itself. Almost at the same time, picks and shovels knock the earth. Mining fights stone by a roundabout way. A tunnel bites beneath the wall and timber props hold the roof. When it cuts deep enough, the pit props are fired. The ground sags, and a panel of wall leans and falls. The work goes on in dark, in damp soil, in the tick of falling grit. Miners do not cry out, they listen. They listen for splitting earth and for the enemy's pick from inside. Countermining is a parallel war. When the garrison hears knocking, they dig a tunnel to meet it, then pour sand, drown flame, and drop the attacker's gallery inside the ground. The besiegers do not live alone under the wall. Their camp runs in rings with ditches, stakes, and storage yards. Big engines need carpenters, smiths, rope, nails, and wet hides for fireproofing. Food needs safe roads. Rivers and coastal waters become the lines that feed the campaign. Each morning the engine crews inspect joints, oil and replace lashings. The kitchen issues hard bread and meat from the herd that travels with the host. Pickets listen along the edge because a small door can open and pour men into the soft tents. On the wall, the garrison works to a different beat. The ditch may be dry or wet, yet it always has one common use, to make the enemy slow and exposed. The inner scarp stands steep. The outer lip is sown with obstacles, ranks of slanted stakes to catch the foot. The base of the wall goes straight up with close-set stone and full mortar. Angled towers give crossing fire so arrows fall on a slant. Arrow loops are narrow outside and wide within, so a bowman shoots oblique from safety. High up, projecting floors let defenders drop weight at the foot of the wall. Small stones falling from that height do not need much force, only true place and time, the instant when ladders bite, when the ram arrives, when the tower bridge lowers. In that small place a single sandbag dropped well can waste a morning's plan. Hidden behind the face, a postern lets a small party strike like a needle. It does not open for bravado. It opens when the attacker blinks, while the stone thrower is being loaded, while the ram is far off, while men at the ladders are still flustered. A door cracks, a squad runs down, and their task is to burn, chop, push, and go back. They do not stay and turn the raid into prolonged hand-to-hand because there is a whole camp and a thick ring outside. Their job is to break rhythm, to fire one straw bundle in the right place, pull one pin, cut one rope, and tip one frame. Inside the walls, life must be slow enough and strong enough. Granaries are sealed layer by layer. Wells are checked each morning. If the outside supply is cut, the cistern must be full. Stores not only grain and dried meat. They include cloth, nails, oil, wet hides, spare timber. Filth and stink are enemies that live near. The keeper rations by the day and avoids overuse in the first week and holds the spirit in check. When a panel is worn by falling stone, masons bring timber and earth to pack behind it. When firepots fall in from outside, water and damp sand wait at every likely place. There is no charm, only readiness. By afternoon the wind shifts and the smell of wet earth mixes with a sweet smoke of wood. Evening is the hour for trying something else. The attackers move ladders to a less watched point and hope the wind carries smoke to hide feet. The garrison throws a pile of thorns into the ditch and fires them to light the water and give the eye a bright field. Crossbow crews take turns behind cover and listen for steps on a fresh ladder, not trusting eyes alone. At midnight, each small sound grows and each shadow has a shape. This is why watches are strict. Any hole in the hearing becomes a lane where a ladder sets down soft. Long days compress into habit. The besieger learns to keep stones falling at one point in all weathers. The garrison learns to patch from inside and to prop a second fence behind the wall. When rain lasts, ground soft at the foot of the wall makes steps heavy and stone throwers need axle checks because wet timber swells. When sun lasts, the cistern lowers and the keeper decides what can still be cooked and what must be eaten cold to save tomorrow. These choices never shine in a tale, yet they are the spine of siege. There are quiet hours inside the string of days. They are the hours of exchanging captives, the hour of a messenger under white flag, the hour when the garrison wants terms so the townsfolk will not starve. Not every siege ends in blood. When stores thin, when sickness lasts, when the river behind is blocked, the gate may open in silence. The defeated accept conditions and the victors enter without display. There are days without any accord. When the wall falls and the gap is wide enough for a rank to enter, all the preparations of weeks narrow into 1 hour. The defenders heap stones and obstacles in the breach. The attackers mass shields, set plank bridges, press stakes, and take ground step by step. Steel does not clang then. It sounds thick and choked. At the strategic level, a siege measures the endurance of both sides. A post that falls is not only a broken wall, it is a lost river landing, an opened granary, a pass unlocked to a new valley. This is why a commander chooses a siege target as one chooses a pin to pull from a great machine. A field won today does not mean next season's grain is held. Holding a town through the rains can matter more than a page of honours. These assault tools do not work alone. Ladders need bow cover. Rams need crossbows to hold heads down. Towers need stone throwers to blur the wall's aim. Mines need a distraction elsewhere. All rests on harmony. On the defence, ditch joins wall, wall joins angle towers for crossing fire, arrow loops combine with maciculations to drop weight. A postern opens at the right moment to shove back an engine crew. Stores hold spirit through long weeks. There is no absolute weapon. Success comes from the right time, the right place, and the right rhythm. Put both sides into one frame and weather and ground. Always speak as supporting actors. Long rain loosens engine ropes, makes arrows heavy, slicks ladder rungs, fills the ditch, drowns stakes. Long sun dries the hides on towers and invites flame, drains the cistern, and makes besiegers thirst more than the wagons can bring. A shift in wind carries kitchen smoke and betrays a camp. Cooking must move to low ground away from the rim. Each small change has watchers who note and adjust. Siege is the art of countless small corrections. When people picture defence, they recall stone first. Yet the true thickness of defence comes from things that look plain. A line of stakes in the exact place. A ditch deepened by a handspan. A plank set off centre to catch falling stones before they crack the walkway. A dogleg exit that turns before it meets the open. These do not draw gasps, yet they keep people alive for tomorrow. A good Castellan seldom speaks loud. He walks the circuit, taps mortar, listens for the ring in stone, asks the storehouse for days remaining, and reminds the watch to shift posts. A strong town stands on 1,000 habits, not a single secret. On the attack, the big engines also need masters who understand fatigue. The stone thrower crew knows the voice of old rope, knows when to rest an hour to spare a snap, knows which split must be shored, and knows the fall point has drifted by a hand's breadth with the wind. Miners hear human breath in the earth from the opposite side, turn a little, brace with another post, and lay fresh planks. Ladder carriers choose places where the wall face is less broken, and arrow slits are thinner. All learn to listen, to look, to wait. Siege is not only a grand finale, it is a school of patience. Some quiet days decide much. A riverbank behind the camp slumps so boats cannot land and rations come half a day late. A well inside the town goes sour and water must be shifted quickly to another cistern. A mason falls from a hoarding, and the garrison loses the one pair of hands that knew the patching best. Such days do not earn a line in a chronicle, yet they twist a siege's course. When the sun tilts, the wall's shadow stretches over the ditch and water glints with the pinpoints of kitchen fires. Camp talk sinks to a murmur and only a far hammer rings on an axle. On the parapet a few figures trade places and lower visors and pull collars close. Another day of siege drifts past. On both sides hands pause upon familiar tools. The besieger lays the ram horizontal to let the wood rest. The garrison sets a new bundle of stakes before a side gate. Everything ready is for morning when ladder, ram, tower, thrower, mine, ditch, wall, angle tower, arrow loop, hidden door, hoarding, storehouse. And forward stakes will speak to each other again in a language plain and dry. Look back and it's clear why siege so often decides more than open battle. A meadow gives fame in a day, a wall holds harvest for years. A broken formation can gather again in the next village. A fallen town pulls down a web of markets, depots, quays, and toll posts. A wise commander sets ladders not only where the stone breaks easier, but where the road behind the wall matters. A wise castellan guards not only a block of masonry, but the eating rhythm of those within. When both understand this, the contest between wood and stone becomes sober, calm, and exact. No shout is needed and no oath, only a firm hand, a straight gaze, and even steps. In that evenness, history shifts. In that evenness, walls write the fate of the land around them. Fog lays over ploughed ground, mud cakes thick on heels. The woodland edge is as wet and cold as a great cloak. Before any order to advance or retire sounds, the ground has spoken. It speaks by little slopes, shallow runs of water, swathes of thick wood, and a cold bend of river. The commander walks the line, fingers brushing a stake, eyes reading a lip in the soil. Decisions begin not with the horn, but with the place for the first rank, the place for the stakes, and the lane the enemy must take. On European plains, low hills are quiet friends. A ridge gives longer sight, gives arrows a little more time to fall true, and gives heavy foot a place to rest shoulders while still keeping a shield wall. From height, infantry has a gradient that slows the foe's charge before it meets the shields. The downslope can help a knight find a thrusting point, but only if the ground is dry. Rain softens soil and turns slopes into streams of mud where horses slip and men fall. A hill is not a constant edge. It is a sum that shifts with the sky. Woods and hedges guard the flanks. The woodland edge checks wind and horse and blocks sideward sight. Place a line between two stands and the enemy struggles to turn it. Hedgerows, ditches, and terrace fields are stiff little lines a careless eye skips. Bound together by sharpened stakes and rope, they turn an open field into a funnel. An attacking formation is squeezed, the rear presses the front, and when arrow rain thickens there is no room to dodge. It all sounds simple. It needs hours of work and people who can braid plain things into an ordered front. Rivers and streams cut across the plain. A shallow brook can be waded, but never with a high bank right ahead. A river terrace turns spear points and arrows into rain dropping straight onto men thigh-deep in water. A narrow wooden bridge restricts files to a handful at a time, stretches the column, garbles orders, and hides the front from the rear. For defenders, holding a bridge is holding time. For attackers, finding a ford or throwing a footbridge costs time, and field time is rarer than book time. Rain turns plans into a test of endurance. Agincourt is the clear lesson. A plot of ploughed field between two woods was soaked by night rain. Facing the English was a long line of French knights in heavy harness and high spirits. When the line moved, mud clung, armour drank water, helms went hot. Skewed stakes leaned outward. The rear pushed the front. Arrows fell, not to pierce plate from far away, but to drive confusion past repair. By the time the front reached striking distance, many were spent and fell in the mud from impacts, and the rear tripped on them and piled on and suffocated. There the soil did the work of a regiment. The English archers did not stand alone. They planted sharpened stakes in slanted rows and cut lanes between the stakes so they could slip back. The stakes frightened horses and bent chargers out of line, forcing knights to slow or swerve long enough for a third and fourth arrow to find a shoulder seam or a horse. When the gap closed, the archers stepped behind the men at arms on foot, so they would not be caught in the crush, and left the front to shields and steel. A high share of archers was a choice that worked only with stakes, a narrow field, woods on the flanks, and a decision to fight on foot. Earlier at Crécy, a mild rise and good height gave the English time to prepare. Ranks stood on steps so arrows could fly over shoulders. French cavalry came up the slope in disorder with horses crowding, tails in ropes and men tumbling. Courage was not lacking. Courage climbing a tight slope under thick arrows turns into the scrape of steel on steel rather than one clean line. At Poitiers, hedges and woodland edges stretched the foe and kept wings from opening. Those three names do not stand for one weapon. They stand for one way of reading ground. A different picture comes from Switzerland. The Swiss turned the long pike into a block that could move, halt, and wheel. They learned to march in deep ranks, to plant a forest of points, to press shoulders together, to keep eyes on flags and ears on drums. When they stepped down a slope, the whole mass went as one body, horses seeing a thick hedge of steel checked, and riders hesitated and the charge weakened. On narrow passes between mountain and lake as at Morgotten, rolling stones and long poles at the head of a column of knights were enough to break the rhythm. Lopen and Sempak, and later Grandson and Merton show that pikemen did not only stand, they knew where to push. Terrain offered windows and discipline opened them, not reckless longing. The Swiss block dies in open flats where an enemy can spread wide. They hunt bottlenecks, favour downslopes, and like the damp strip where hooves slip. They guard their sides with comrades holding shields and swords, push lightly against firm resistance, and push hard when a crackling sound tells them a rank opposite is failing. They do not envy a bright sabre. They study a damp clod and a hole that last night's rain made. Every hand in the block knows what the next hand is doing. They win by turning slope and wood and rock into friends. Wind and sun are not mere poetry. A low sun behind you blinds the enemy at daybreak, heats helms sooner, and brings sweat into eyes earlier. A friendly wind carries arrows and a headwind shortens range. A sheet of cooking smoke that drifts toward the enemy gives away a camp and kills surprise. Dry ground turns grass into tinder. A small fire makes the strip in front hot and smoky, and sight fails even at speaking distance. Mud, as already shown, is the defender's ally, yet it is also a measure of patience. If the attacker waits for it to crust, the whole picture changes. The trouble is bread and water. Each day on the field burns more stores than a day in town. Herds need pasture. Hard bread dwindles. Engine ropes sag. Many battles were driven into wet days by supply schedules rather than by hot heads. Terrain is not only surface, it is time. An English pattern of cooperation fits certain ground. Stakes are planted early. Archers spread along the front. Gaps between archer clusters allow dismounted men-at-arms to move. When the enemy is squeezed into a funnel, arrows open. Infantry takes the tempo when fronts meet, and light horse probe both flanks to chase and block once the enemy's first rank breaks. It all rests on a base with woods on the flanks and a mild rise, and the whole pattern skews if one part is missing. The Swiss pattern hunts ground that lets a deep block move. They choose a slope gentle enough to keep momentum, a lane wide enough for depth, and cover for the sides. Facing an obstacle, the first rank does not idle. The second takes its place. The drum keeps the beat for all. The foe sees a wall of points approach. The heart cannot keep pace with feet, and orders to pull in the flanks or to withdraw come a beat too late. In that frame, personal valour is only one small share. Not every fight allows a general to choose his ground. Some must be fought at a river crossing because the whole campaign's life hangs there. Cold water up to the knee, arrows fall like a comb, shields take a share, and the rest is hope that the far bank gives a dry foothold. Sometimes men march through bog because harvest is near, and a week lost will empty the storehouses for a province. Then a good commander turns disadvantage into a trap. He hides a few light foot parties in low woods, and waits for a wild lunge to clip a flank and withdraw. Not to press a long fight, only to break rhythm. The famous names above do not stand alone. They represent ways of choosing ground and tempo. Crécy is a rising spine and volleys that keep time. Poitiers is hedges and woodland squeezing the road. Agincourt is mud and a narrow funnel. Morgarten is a tight pass between mountain and water. Laupen and Sempach are pike blocks that know how to go forward. Grandson and Merton are the staying power of a formation facing a foe of great repute. In all of them, ground builds the base and people complete it. Without the base, fine skill is a flash only. Look closer and terrain dictates how weapons are used. A fine sword is poor in a mire. A long pike moves badly in thick woods. The crossbow suits a shot through narrow loops on a bank. A longbow needs room to spread a line. Maces and hammers earn their keep when distance shrinks in tight places, where heavy blows drain strength through armour. Stakes are worth most on soil firm enough to hold. Without that they are half-buried firewood. Stone throwers have no place outside a siege, and in a field fight the time to build them kills the chance. Terrain also speaks to supply. A clay road after a few rains cannot carry heavy wagons, and food is forced to go by a river. A high dike that hides the view can draw a convoy into an ambush. A small bridge over a canal bears only so many axles in an hour and stretches the army, which makes it easy to cut. Campsites are therefore chosen not only for dry ground, they are chosen for approaches that are not crossed by ditches, for a high point for a watch, and for a copse to stop the wind. Put people on this ground and valour keeps its place yet leaves the centre. Valour holds a line at a muddy lip, yet the mud itself weakens the attacker. Valour steps onto a narrow bridge, yet the bridge is the thing that stretches the formation and garbles the word of command. Valour takes one more step up a slope, yet the slope is the thing that exacts the price. This does not cheapen human worth. It sets it in the true relation to wind, water, and earth. In the end, a medieval front is a long dialogue between organisation and terrain. A good commander does not hunt for a pretty battle. He finds the ground that helps him most and hurts the enemy most. He waits for rain to end before he moves, or he keeps the rain as an ally. He plants stakes and rows, uses the woodland edge to hold a flank, sends the pike block down the right slope, and holds the bridge to the last breath. In this frame, the typical battle is not as bright as legend. It is quiet, dense, heavy, and sensible. The tempo follows the ridge, the mud track, the hedge, and the river bend. Read it well and the army moves lighter, lasts longer, and keeps closer together. Seen closely, that is the discreet beauty of soldiering among wind and water and earth. A thin morning mist lies over the dirt road. Wooden carts roll slowly, each turn of the wheels giving a faint groan. Last night's rain has blotched the surface with patches of mud. The ropes that lash water casks creak against the side rails. Beside the marching line, a herd of cattle stretches out in a long brown band, warm breath fogging the air. Above, a small signal flag beats the wind like a hand keeping time. The light knock of hardtack on a helmet rim gives a sound that is firm, short, neat. From such a scene, history opens by the cadence of footsteps, not the blare of horns, but the yoke across a shoulder, the knotted rope, and quiet choices that let an army stand one day longer. On most campaigns, a soldier is not only armour and weapons. He has a pack of things needed to live. Spare clothing, boots with soles already restitched, a thin blanket rolled tight, a small knife, an iron bowl, flint, needle and thread. A belt with a leather pouch for hardtack. On the shoulder a spear shaft or a bow. On the back rations for many weeks, depending on the orders of the court. Not all are issued evenly. Many companies are given only a clear instruction that each man must feed himself for a set span. That burden sets the marching pace and decides endurance on the 7th day, the 10th, when rain goes on and cook fires will not catch. On the road, the wooden cask is a character in its own right. River and pond water are not always clean. In warm seasons it turns foul quickly. The smell of mud and weeds makes one hesitate. So armies lean hard on small beer and wine, not to get drunk, but to avoid disease. The weak beer is lightly brewed and drunk in place of water on hot days. Wine is thinned and ladled bowl by bowl, a way to quiet the stomach. In a soldier's hand, the iron bowl is a multi-tool. He drinks from it, scoops with it, cooks a little thin porridge when grain is at hand, catches rain if the sky is kind. These small habits keep a unit's strength, because a settled stomach lets the shoulders carry a few more miles. Not everything rides on men's backs. Alongside the ranks moves a civilian supply train. It is the world of teamsters, the travelling smith, the cobbler, the washer, the cook, the healer. They do not hold spears, but their hands keep tomorrow's rhythm. A broken cart axle pin, the right wedges and hammers it true. A vambrace is dented. The smith kindles a small brazier and taps it flat. A sole splits. The cobbler threads flax through dampened leather and lays thicker stitches at the heel. Each does a job few sing about, but missing one link slows the whole line at once. Ahead of them lies a transport problem with no shortcut. River routes and coastal lanes with boats and proper landings are used whenever possible. Order carries more, faster, and safer than long days on dirt roads. Boats run grain sacks, coils of bowstring, crossbow prods, and salt barrels to the rendezvous. From the quay, goods go to wagons and take short lanes into camp. When a campaign drags on, a stable waterline is like a major artery. It lets an army stand in the interior without stripping bare whatever lies in front of it. But many regions have no easy landing. Then the dirt road is the only way. The train stretches long, each wooden wagon loaded with water casks, ration bags, bundles of sharpened stakes, coils of flax rope, bags of nails, picks and shovels, iron stoves, even planks to throw across ditches. On rainy days, wheels sink deep. Loads must be lightened or more oxen put to. There is no need to shout just a short word and a light snap of the whip on a flank. The accompanying officer raises a flag high so all can see when the way narrows. by the colour and stitched marks. Groups know their place in the moving line. It is a silent code seen at a glance, needing no talk. The herd that follows an army is a mobile store of meat. Cattle, sheep, sometimes pigs, move behind the main column to avoid panic. They low softly at night. The smell of wild grass and damp hair mixes with kitchen smoke. When dried rations run low, one animal's taken out, a rough slaughter yard set at the camp edge, and the meat is divided by unit. Fat with salt is kept for another day, bones simmered for broth to stretch thin porridge. It is the rare protein between meals of hard bread. Hardtack is stone hard yet keeps well. Wrap it on a helmet and it rings with a dry metallic note. Soaked in hot water or watered wine, it softens and smells faintly of toasted flour. Living off the land is not just a phrase. When an army passes, villagers on both sides of the road know their granaries will be requisitioned. The hen coop will be short a few birds. Some are paid, some are not. It is the habit of campaign, rarely with another choice. Both sides in a war live off the land like this. At times a written order lists numbers and prices, but coin reaches the villagers slower than the army leaves. The gap accumulates into resentment and into stories retold in later seasons. The supply train is more fragile than it looks. Cart bodies are wood, wheels are thin-spoked, axles are bound with leather, one light cavalry troop looping behind can scatter the whole ribbon. Everyone knows the tale of the English baggage struck at Agincourt. On a muddy field, the front still held, but the rear fell into disorder under a raid. Barrels tumbled, wheels jammed in ruts, cattle bawled. The noise of chaos crawled forward to the line. Signal flags had to swing back twice, thrice, to keep men from spilling into the fields to save gear. Every manoeuvre in battle is stretched taut by logistics like that. To hold the train is to hold your long breath. An army's pace is set by many small things. At first light, the wake order passes from the command tent to squads. Small cook fires flare, thin pots go on trivets, water trembles at the boil. Hardtack is broken into pieces and soaked in bowls to soften. A scrap of salt meat if any is left. Small beer is poured around. The night watch is relieved with a sip of warm water. Lashings on the wagons are tightened one more turn, knots checked one last time. When the signal flag dips 3 beats, the column lifts its feet. Soles strike ground in even taps like a small drum. The road ahead is not only long, it changes colour with the weather. In sun, fine dust cakes with sweat in a film. Eyes sting, but steps grow lighter. In rain, mud tugs at heels, leather goes damp, padded armour grows heavier. The carter sweeps clay from the rims with a fir branch so wheels keep turning. On a grade, the assisting team braces shoulders along the sideboards and counts time with breaths. Over the crest they let go, chuckle under their breath, and trade places with the next group. Such stretches repeat and repeat into the breathing pattern of the whole train. No pounding drums, only steady human strength flowing through the bends in the road. Camp goes up each evening by a plan long learned. On reaching the ground, the central banner goes in first. Kitchens are set where wind is just right, no blowing out the fire, no smoke back into tents. The command tent sits near the flag for quicker orders. The infirmary stands away from the kitchen and close to water for washing. Grain stores sit a step higher against night rain. Wagons are parked in a ring to guard the goods and form a temporary palisade. The herd is tied in rows with dry straw spread ahead. Chores ditching around tents for runoff, staking guy ropes, hanging damp cloth over lines strung between 2 wagons. All of it is the living picture of logistics at work. Those who keep strict water and ration discipline endure long days. Casks are always lidded, cups are set mouth down. Flour left is tied in 2 layers. The salt pouch is hung high against damp. At a glance they seem like trifles, but they keep men from falling ill in mid-campaign. A good commander knows victory lies not only on a slope, but in how many healthy bodies stand where they should at the 10th hour of a wet day. On the waterline, the boat rides with the sounds of wood rubbing and hawsers straining. The landing lies under old trees. Stevedores pass casks hand to hand, careful not to knock them against the gunwales. The clerk marks which sack belongs to which unit. Receipts are written on thin parchment, folded, tied, and handed over like something pinned into memory. The upriver run cannot be late, on the far end a wing is waiting. With water high, a loaded boat moves quickly. With water low, the oars must be limber, the prow skimming along the bank to spare effort. A soldier watches and knows tomorrow's ration rides in that hull. The coastal road is another tale. Winds shift by the hour, Waves slap the sand, sharp-prowed boats surf close to shore and unload to waiting carts. Horses bathe their fetlocks in salt water, foam breaks at the ankle and cools them for a while. From the strand, the column follows the lee of the dunes to avoid sinking and joins the main dirtway. Such routes are seldom ambushed because the view is open. In exchange, if a storm comes, the whole plan must turn inland at once or the supplies ride off with the wind. All this movement and supply matters only when it meets tactics at the front. How many sharpened stakes can be planted? Whether a timber breastwork can be raised before dusk? Whether a bowstring can be changed out when wet, these depend on branches cut in the morning. Coils of rope carried on backs, hammers not misplaced. People remember the battle on the plain, but to reach that place there was a whole day of quiet craft. A right nail in the right hole, a pinny lashed tight, a full water cask, those can be the difference between two outcomes of one afternoon. For the same reason, the supply train becomes a target for flank raiders. Light horse need not break the main line, they need only throw into disorder the people guarding wheels, water and nails. One signaller down, one shout, one ox loose, and the whole rear can fall out of step. So escort parties ride on both sides, eyes on the verge, ears pricked for a strange note in the wind. When they see dust rise, they lower lances and set for a quick block. The aim is not to chase to the ends of the earth, but to hold for a few minutes so the train can pass the choke. Life on the road has few perfect silences, but many small pauses that tie the spirit back together. At night a soldier leans against a wheel, breaks a corner of hardtack, swarms it on a pot lid, and brings it to his lips, hearing the crust crack softly. Overhead the signal flag still sways as if breathing. Nearby a teamster sits on a shaft and strokes a tired ox. A smith taps a newly set plate. The metal's deep tone like a heartbeat unhurried. A sip of light brew warms the throat. Eyes rest on a small cooking fire that never flares high. There is no need to say much. Each knows tomorrow will be like today, and each knows that such days are what carry a formation to where it must go. Supply and movement look material at first glance. In truth, they are the art of arranging people. Who goes first? Who goes last? Who bears the colours? Who minds the water? Who minds the carts? Who sets the kitchen? Who watches the herd? Each task has an owner, and each person is laced into another like knots in a net. The denser the net, the harder it is for a sudden tear to rip it open. That is why a durable army differs from a crowd on a whim. From the creak of wheels to the rap of hardtack on steel, small sounds join into one long line. Along that line the flag still leads quiet as a promise bringing the company through mud, through rain, through one more day without breaking. Dawn is fine as silk. Dew clings to the short grass. At the edge of the practice ground, bowstrings come to brace with a very faint hum. The wood groans one low note and falls still. The whole line stands straight. They breathe in, hold one beat. Let arrows go like dark slivers. No one shouts. Only even breathing, the soft step of feet changing place and a whisper of cloth. From such repeated motions, a craft is made. A longbowman needs years before the body bears a heavy draw. Shoulders broaden in a special way. Forearms stand out in corded lines. The chest thickens on the strong side. Those marks do not come in a season. They come after a childhood spent with a bow. The session follows a fixed order. First the stance is set. The commander walks slow between ranks, lays a hand on one shoulder and nods. Then another straightens a spine, eases an elbow up, lowers a wrist so the arrow lies still. The first arrow only warms the frame. The second begins to count time. The third counts to the score. When tired, the archer does not stop outright but lowers cadence to keep technique. The lesson is not in how many arrows fly, but in an unchanged stance. Eyes far, mouth set, shoulders steady, wrist quiet. That is the moment the body writes the line of force into itself. Toward evening, when the sun tilts, the archer lets down the string and rubs wax where the serving chafes so the fibres do not fray. Fingers run the bow's back to check for checks. Any odd line is shaved smooth with a small knife. A strip of cloth is wrapped round the grip so sweat does not soak the wood. A bowman's kit is plain to see yet lacks nothing. Arrows are bound neat with a soft tie. A wad of cloth plugs the quiver mouth so fletchings do not bruise. A spare string lies coiled tight. A small pot of wax. A loose piece of leather to wrap the hand against cold. Tending gear is training too, because a broken string in a rain hour steals an entire volley from the line. Beside the archery field, the spear drill keeps its own beat. On damp soil, Shafts knock shields with a muffled note. Step in, turn the hips, drive the point, draw back, settle into a guarding angle. The front hand leads, the rear hand braces. The eyes do not leave the front. At the order to change formation, a line goes column, spearheads gather like a spray of bamboo, and a stable wall appears. The hard part is not the strong thrust, but the discipline to hold exactly even spacing with the next man. Half a foot off and a hole opens. With practice, they learn to feel a comrade's shoulder seam, to hear a breath behind, to sense when 2 points have overlapped too long and must change angle to cover a shield that just slipped. In another corner, men with polearms work to a clipped tempo. Halberd or bill both carry weight forward. Force travels in a circle. Each chop must finish in a safe place so the wielder does not pull himself out of the rank. Every motion has a resting point within a single breath. Two-handed arms ask for strong backs and steady legs, but above all, a sense of formation. Any weapon turns into a danger to one's own side if the bearer does not know exactly where he stands. So every drill has a threshold. At fast enough, they stop, switch to direction changes, then stop again and take one deep breath to cool the muscles. That rhythm keeps the unit from being dragged along by its own momentum. A knight grows up on a different path. From very small, he learns a saddle, reins, the heat of a horse's back. Morning is riding, afternoon is weapons. Later he learns to put the lance on the right point at first touch. The habits of mounting, saluting the colours, tightening straps, locking the visor, lowering the faceplate come so early that they turn into reflex. Each piece sits in its place and is donned in order. Mail shirt under, plates above, a gorget laced to the bassinet, gauntlets lined with dry cloth. A squire tightens cords in sequence and checks the armpit pins not so tight that an arm cannot rise. When it's time to go, a knight moves with his small troop, not alone. The pretty charges of paintings are moments. Survival lives in keeping to the standard and the signal. Discipline rises from such details. Orders travel by flags, whistles, short drum beats. One colour lifted means 10 paces forward. Another, tilted, means raise shields. A small, long-tailed pennon whipping hard signals javelins away. No need for bellowing, these signs braid themselves into a soldier's eye. In rain, when hearing fails, eyes still read the sense. In darkness, a half-hooded torch casts the signal's shadow on a tent wall, enough for the watch to take it in without giving away the post. Organisation lives on such wordless languages. Psychology is trained to. It is not left to luck. There is a set for bearing noise. Groups stand apart. One beats shields, one flaps cloaks, one rushes. Then all three close in to throw up just enough disorder for those in the eye, to learn to keep their gaze forward. No one tips the helm outward. No one turns his back. Each silently counts the steps to the stake ahead. Breathing becomes a ruler. Once used to the racket, a blink no longer cuts the line. It is a simple drill that readies a man for the instant when a horse bears down. Mud spatters, and hot breath hits the face. In that fraction, feet do not slide. Spearheads do not drift. The steadiness of a few front ranks is the root of the whole block. The shock of cavalry strikes spirit before it strikes flesh. Not every formation can stand it. A wave of horse throws a continuous bass along the ground like running thunder. New eyes follow colours and glinting harness and forget the true distance. A good unit does not look at the rider. They look at the gap between forelegs, at the path that will pass, at the stakes placed ahead. When the horse's head comes down, the stake row rises on cue and the points show clean above the mud. That calm lowers the charger's force more than any shout. Unshaken minds are the first wall. In truth, many routes begin with disorder in the head long before the body is hit. Drill grounds do not tell the whole campaign. 10-day and 20-day roads wear spirits down by slow degrees. Long hunger puts a tremble in the hand that draws a bow. Cold nights stiffen wrists for the morning. Days of rain turn boots damp and raise blisters. Bad water brings sickness. Each small harm drops morale by one notch. The good commander cares for rest as much as for lines of battle. Time for a hot meal, a warm basin for the night watch. In order to pull off a flooded stretch, all are tonics for the mind. No man is as hard as a nail, but each can be as strong as a rope if dried at the right time. Longbowmen keep endurance by a steady cycle. Easy runs each morning to open joints. Never overdraw when tired. Take a whole day for kit maintenance when drizzle pins the column. Avoid showing off. Dry drills, yes, but each time one small note of strength is conserved. One more layer of calm is laid. That habit and fair sharing of burdens keep the line from sagging in the third week. Knights learn restraint as well. In the saddle, it's easy to be carried by speed and power. Yet armour, horse and troop are not for a bright moment but for weight in the right place. When needed, they dismount to join the foot, lift shields, and push spears, not shying from work that pictures seldom show. That change of place asks the self to step back. Discipline is not only obedience, it is putting oneself into the rank at the proper time. Disease is an enemy that carries no flag. Long damp camps breed insects. Old food breeds stink. Dirty hands carry sickness to mouths. The kitchen keeps simple rules. A knife for cooked food, another for raw. A hand washing pot next to the kettle. The trash pit downwind and moved when the wind shifts. Small rules shave down the odds of spread. A soldier is not healthy because he is born stronger but because he lives by right habit. Spirits follow the same rule. A clean camp clears the head. Hot food eases temper. A full night's sleep leaves no morning snarl. The temper of one person blends into the air of the company. The unit stays a level plane. Many armies carry relics. A cloth that touched an altar, a small saint's bone, a charm scrawled with a prayer. They rest in small wooden boxes hung under a flag or set in a tent. Before marching, a cantor reads a short prayer. The murmur follows like a wave. The rite is not meant to bend the world's rules. It gathers hearts into one. Believing that one's work fits a larger meaning helps a man bear load. In rain hours, a glance at the flag that bears the small box calls back the brief prayer and keeps hands from slackening. That faith is a brace for the mind, a cord that ties person to person and holds the ranks tighter in a hard instant. Psychology is not only endurance, it is the craft of pushing the other side out of time. Light horse circling a supply train need not break in, they raise dust and force their foes to detach men to guard. When a gap opens, the javelin strikes the weak seam. On the line, a flight of arrows in front may not kill many, yet it makes the enemy bring shields up, lose sight, and tangle thought for one beat. Just then stakes rise, spears extend, feet press, all together to rob the opposite block of its decision. Often victory is a mind game won by holding a few beats longer than the other side. Deeper still, psychology lives in how a unit tells itself its story. Each has its own tales told by elders from past seasons, the great rain, when they kept the standard upright. The time the train broke free in a wood. The smith who reset a joint and saved a comrade's arm. Such scraps form a collective memory. When new men hear them, they stand steadier in the first months. Before a march, a commander names a few ordinary people who did the right thing in a hard hour. That way of naming shapes a soft standard. Each wants to do his small job right, so one day his name is read that way. When the horn closes the day, the drill field falls quiet again. Bowstrings are hung on pegs, arrows set in order, polearms stacked, helms wiped within and covered with a thin cloth so they dry by morning. The tired sit on a timber step, drink a mouth of warm water and let shoulders drop. No one speaks of honour or glory. They ask whether the boots are dry, whether the bowstring is waxed, whether the blister needs another strip of cloth. Such small questions lay the base for a courage that does not shout. Training is not apart from discipline, and discipline is not apart from morale. The three are twisted together like strands of a rope. One good day on the field makes 1 hour in battle less confused. A formation that can wait for orders and share work endures the third week in rain. A faith kept by simple rites keeps hands from dropping weapons when they see the dust of horses. From far off, a battlefield is metal and flags. Up close, it is breathing, technique, and the knack of standing side by side without shoving. In that close-up, the history of the medieval soldier appears durable and warm, like the back of a horse that has come through many seasons yet still walks evenly on damp earth. A thin morning fog. On field still holding the night's water, a flock of crows bursts from the hedge when hoofbeats sound from the edge of the dirt road. The banners of an army are lost in dust. No one speaks loudly, yet doors are shut in an instant. Wooden bars drop, iron bolts slide, children are pulled into the inner room. The church bell rings in short, breathless peals because the man on the rope is trembling. For villages, that is the most familiar sound of the age and army passing. When the first ranks reach the gate, the village bailiff is already waiting by a rough table thrown together in haste. A list of articles subject to requisition beside the ink jar. He knows what will happen. Rice, barley, salt, dry straw, horse fodder, leather, nails and rope. Hard-baked loaves that keep, smoked meat hanging from the rafters. bolts of coarse cloth set aside for the coming season. Each item struck from the ledger is like strips of flesh torn from the village body. A soldier bearing the commissary's seal bends to hoist a sack and recites the words he has learned by heart. Voice forced into gentleness, the court will settle payment when it can. In many places, the receipt is only a scrap that will never meet the coin it promises. Every army is thirsty. Each day horses drink cask after cask and men demand pot after pot. The well by the fields is emptied in a rush. The mud at the bottom stirred into clouded water. Those coming last use whatever rain jars are left behind. The smell of sweat. Horsehide and wet straw mixes into a new kind of fog, heavier than mountain mist, clinging to tiles and leaves. If it stopped at requisition, the village could manage, but the column is too long and plans rarely suffice. By noon, a few doors are forced. Salted meat is snatched from hooks. Hard bread is snapped in hasty halves. Small splinters fly when a doorbar gives. An old man who blocks the threshold is shoved down by a shielded body. No sword swings, yet the collapse of a quiet habit is as heavy as a stab. Plunder has many faces. Some wears a signature and looks lawful. Some is explained with one word: necessary. Some is the plain hunger of a man who has marched 3 weeks. A few slip into a corner, grab whatever fits the hand and vanish out the back when the officer calls. A few open a big chest and find only old clothes and a wooden crucifix. They set it back exactly, mutter apologies in a strange tongue and run because their unit has already moved. In that picture there is greed, there is fear, and there is weariness. For the village the result is the same, the granary is lighter, and the price of rice will rise tomorrow. Amid the confusion the clerk keeps at his work, the pen running in straight lines on the board laid in haste. He records even what is taken without paper, a reflex to keep memory for the village. By day's end the book is full of broken lines. This house has lost a pig raised through the winter. That house has lost 3 coils of rope braided over a week. The cattle stall is empty, hoof marks stamped in the dry floor. The lines do not wail. They are proof so that one day, when the district officer passes, the village will still remember what it lost. In that age, memory is also a kind of ration. Outside the gate, on the slope, a few stone carts from the local building yard stand idle. A mason thumps his cap down and watches the horses pass. He knows he will not reach the site today. The stone is there and the wall still needs setting first, but the lime will not arrive and the blocking timbers will not come. Or eats even the handwork that seems far from sword and spear. Weeks later the half wall will crack in rain. The church beam will go up late. A season's work is cut apart by the days of an army road. No one can fill that gap, even if the mason tries to leave early and come home late. By afternoon, when the dust has settled, doors open a crack. The village checks itself. A mother looks up to see if the roof still keeps its thatch in place. The smith counts his knives and finds a new turned wooden handle missing. The tavern keeper reaches into a jar and is surprised by a few small coins. It turns out a squad left money for the bread they ate, the last man tucking coins in while the keeper hid in the storeroom. Such stories leave a village unsure whether to be sad or to smile. Soldiers have many faces, yet life afterward does not sort them. Supper still has to be cooked with half the rice planned. Children still sleep under fewer blankets. Then come the men without armour. They carry no swords, they bring pens and seals. They do not seize, they register. In the church a big table is set neatly. On it lies a broad parchment scroll, one corner held down by a stone. They read a decree, steady-voiced, about contributions to the treasury to maintain peace and order. The reasons sound as proper as reasons do when spoken from on high. The numbers are not small. A tax on each roof, on each mill, on each cask of wine, and once more when the campaign runs longer than expected. The village sighs. The coins just gathered will not march with the troops, but will sometimes vanish like grain from a bin. In regions where rulers change, yesterday's tax paper turns into a worthless scrap by afternoon. That burden falls not only into the strong box, it seeps into life in a slow, deep way. A father sells a young ox to pay the new levy, and next season lacks the strength to plough. A craftsman trims the money for timber to make shelves, and the church books lie on the floor a few months more. The wine cellar adds water to make the count, and the village drinks something thinner and keeps a light bellyache for days. The fee at the market gate rises, and anyone bringing goods to town weighs every sprig of greens. In some places complaining turns into a crowd. One day the crowd has sticks. No one in it thinks he's doing politics. They only want to keep their own harvest. The rich districts are not spared. Bustling market streets are pressed for a special contribution under a name that sounds like a cloth of gold. Guilds meet at night, candles burn in closed rooms. They tally whether to cut purchases of blue cloth or red, whether to delay a ship or cancel it, whether to keep goods in the warehouse or send them elsewhere. Each choice pulls masters, pulls hands, pulls the porters at the river landing. A stream of silver drawn out of the town means one less table filled at the inn, the kiln's fire lowered, children playing knucklebones under the eaves, seeing the rooms look darker. Taxes are invisible, but everyone feels them by a portion grown small. In the village, billeting's another word for crowding. A notice pasted to a door means that house must ready space for a squad. In some places the guests are polite, spread clean straw, set a water basin by the porch, offer a bowl of hot broth. In others too many arrive at once and a small house cannot breathe. A bed meant for 3 now takes 2 more. The long bench becomes a sleeping place. The kitchen must cook twice. A strange smell lodges on the walls. The damp of wet clothes stains the plaster in patches. Daughters stay in the back room. The grandmother wraps her scarf tighter. Homes that had kept the secrets of each family now have unfamiliar eyes in them, even if the soldiers try to turn their faces away. With sleeping space comes space for horses. The cattle stall is given over to 2 war mounts. Straw reserves drop fast. The householder must cut the feed set aside for his own stock and give it to his guests. Each morning the manure heap grows, and children are kept from the front yard. The low wall is gouged by iron shoes. The gate is freshly scored, the latch hole widened. When the column moves on, the owner goes out and lays a hand on each damaged place, feeling anger and embarrassment together, because the men who were there were not villains. They are people inside a larger machine, and the small house is a temporary gear. Requisitioning property to go with the army is another fear. A wagon of grain bound for market is halted, made to hoist a new banner, then turned around. The carter receives a stamped slip. He gives a rueful smile. The slip will keep him from being fined at the city gate, but it will not spare his wagon from wear. The draft horses split their hooves. The wheels lose spokes. The ruts of mud snap the pins. By the time it is returned, the wagon is no longer the wagon it was. The village will need many days to repair it. In that time, the next market day passes, and the money that should have bought seed for the coming season vanishes like a fish that has just slipped the hand. For some families, the most frightening thing is not what is taken or the taxes owed, but the break in the cadence of life. Sunday is no longer as quiet as before. Morning mass still takes place, yet fewer come because they are tired. The music at the tavern at the end of the lane stops altogether because the player has gone with the supply train. Children are not allowed to go to the fields to look for nests, since an order forbids anyone to cross the village boundary. The sense of a coherent cycle, sowing then harvest, winter then summer, suddenly tears in many places. Once the cloth is torn, needle and thread must work a long while before it is whole again, and the seam still shows no matter how skillful the hand. There are days when the village receives good news. The army passes without stopping, leaving only dust and hoofbeats fading away. No new lines are added to the ledgers, no sacks go missing from the granary. The children rush into the road again, laughing when splashes of mud stain their trouser legs. The grown-ups are glad for a breath of space. Yet that gladness does not erase what has already been written. The tax deadline remains. The numbers stand fixed on the board. Any door that once bore a billeting notice will be posted again when the army road swings back. Wartime is like a long storm season. There are calm days, but the wind has not left the sea. When the sun sets, the village lights its lamps. The light is scant and the voices are few, only spoons tapping bowls with very small sounds. The old breathe out with longer sighs than usual. They have lived through seasons like this before and know there will be seasons like this again. They gather the evening cries of the street sellers into memory so that they can rise in the morning. In a corner of the yard, a blacksmith sets down his hammer and spreads his rough hands on his knees. Today he forged an extra batch of nails because the church gate sprang its latch when a troop stopped by. The pay he received is a few small coins someone left. He nods. On days like this, keeping a hinge running smooth is a small drumbeat for his own heart. From far away, war looks like painted panels, banners, horses and armour. Up close it is a door latch dry of oil, a well gone low too soon, a ledger page filled with adjoining strokes. It passes on the backs of weary soldiers and it remains in the kitchen drawers of small houses. Plunder and requisition, whatever the name, leave fingerprints in the wood. taxes, whatever the wording, leave numbers in the book. Billeting, courteous or rough, leaves a crowded night and unfamiliar breath under a familiar roof. As night falls, the last hoofbeats dissolve in the wind. The village sleeps late because there are ropes to retie, chests to wedge back, lamps to count again. On the porch, a single stray army boot is set neatly down. The owner does not throw it away and does not keep it as a keepsake. Tomorrow he will hand it back to the patrol if they return. In this country, the best thing is for everything to go back to its rightful place. That is the only way a life can take root in seasons of upheaval. And in the deepest part of the picture, people still believe something simple. If the evening's breathing can stay calm, tomorrow morning can still be an honest day of work. The drill ground lies away outside the city wall, the grass cropped low and the tamped earth so even that the heels of old boots print clearly. In the thin morning haze, the ranks line straight and draw the bowstring to a fixed point on the cheek. The strings hum softly, steady as breathing. The left arm stays long. The right shoulder turns along the draw. The spine does not strain. The instructor walks the line with a wooden rod marked with cuts, lays it against one elbow, presses another shoulder lightly, and sets each body in its proper place. Companies of longbowmen like these are not formed in a single season. Muscle must be trained for many years to draw a high-draw weight bow steadily, and only when the body has learned the work does a true firing rhythm appear. Endurance is forged along with strength, not after it. The trainee's fingertips are darker than a field hand's. The web between thumb and forefinger is calloused. There is a faint mark on the right wrist where the string once brushed. The shoulder bones thicken in a very particular way. Some have shot since childhood and their bones slowly change shape, adapting to the task. On the field, the straw butts are fixed at measured distances. Some days they shoot long. Some days they shoot short, but in many volleys. The work does not aim only at one accurate arrow. It aims at stability for a long span. A student must know how to string, to knock, to loose with 3 fingers, then repeat the sequence without thinking about it. When every motion has reached the point where it needs no deliberation, the eyes have room to read the unit signals and the wind. Commands for archers are usually short. 2 whistle blasts. Raise your bow, 3 blasts, loose according to the agreed rhythm. Between those beats, the file leader watches the wind. The signal flags in the elevation and decides whether to arc the shots or shoot flat for range. Simple orders keep the line from tangling and let each person know his part even while standing amid dust, hoof noise and drums. English longbowmen are famous for their rate of fire, yet the record rests on a very ordinary foundation. They go out to the field regularly, eat rations with enough substance, draw until the arm trembles lightly, rest briefly, then repeat. Whatever glory a victory may have is built from such hours. In another corner, a group trains with crossbows. Compared with the longbow, the crossbow requires less continuous bodily draw, but it demands precise handling. Set the bow to the stirrup, draw with a winding lever or belt hook. Set the nut, place the fletched bolt, raise the stock, aim. The instructor does not demand a higher speed so much as certainty. At close range, a quarrel can strike very hard, so breaking the shot at the right instant is tied directly to a comrade's safety. Crossbowmen learn to use rests, to shoot behind large pavises, to fire in a flat line, to advance by the rhythm of covering and moving. They are parts of a mechanism, and the mechanism needs every link to run true. At the far end, spear shafts stand like a small forest. Infantry train with the spear first, and only then take up more complex weapons. The basic lesson is to keep the line, stab straight, withdraw quickly, block low to stop cavalry, block high to bat a blow aside. A hedge of spears is not beautiful like a painting and requires no grand swings. The drill leader has the man at the head of each file call the cadence clearly. When the order to change formation comes, each turns by a measured step and the shafts do not tangle. Such spear blocks are always the foundation of an army that thinks ahead. In many places, the appearance of infantry with long spears changes the balance and forces cavalry to be more cautious. On the sand, another group trains with polearms, halberd, bill, glaive, each with its own balance and edge, each demanding its own method. The halberdier learns to pierce with the spike, to hew with the axe face, to hook and pull a rider from the saddle. The billman is used to catching the rim of a shield, shoving the enemy's edge out of line and opening a hole for a comrade's thrust. Practice starts with slow movements so the learner can feel weight and momentum. Then the pace rises and the motions are fitted into formation. The whole group learns to hold just enough interval so that when they swing, No blade ticks the crest of the neighbour's helm. No one is allowed to waste strength. A battle lasts longer than one imagines, and anyone who spends his force without thrift will falter before the moment of need. Inside the walls, a smaller yard for knights is raked smooth with sand. A post is set in the centre with a small shield mounted on it and a hanging sandbag. This is the quintin, a training tool known for centuries. The rider gallops straight in, lowers the lance and strikes the shield. If the point glances, the sandbag whips back and thumps the shoulder or back, painful enough to mark a serious error. The session includes mounting, setting the bridle, tightening the girth, laying on armour in the right order. Every motion must be so practiced that it can be done in darkness without mistake. The best rider can still fall beside a fence lined with stakes if the girth is one notch loose, or the stirrup strap catches on a coat. On a battlefield, small faults can grow into large defeats. The path to knighthood is not short. A child of a noble house may begin as a page, then a young squire, learning manners, caring for horses and keeping discipline. Only at the proper age will he receive a sword and take part in a ceremony. Honour does not replace training. An effective knight must be able to hold formation from the saddle, understand flag and horn signals and halt where his presence keeps the line closed. He must also know when to dismount, when to hand off the long sword and take a short spear to move into a tight space. The shine of polished armour is only the outer layer. Beneath it are the back and thighs enduring a long day in harness, and the habit of steadying the breath before the lance comes down. Discipline keeps everything from collapsing. Some units punish, deserting the ranks severely. Some dock the pay of a man who is drunk on watch. In some places, a theft from the ration store is judged in the yard on the spot so others will remember. Rules like these sound harsh, yet somewhere they have saved a whole company. In rain, if the sentry sleeps, the stake line will have a gap. In fog, if the signaller misses a beat on the horn, the left wing will come apart from the centre. That chain of discipline did not appear in a moment. It is taught on the drill ground, reinforced along the march, repeated in camp and hung in the kitchen like a reminder board. When everyone knows his part, the formation can turn without anyone shouting. The cavalry shock that fills books is heard differently on the ground. Its effect is power and mind at once. A long line of armour and lances rushing in makes a distinctive sound. The earth vibrates lightly and dust rises to the beat of hooves. Even when the lances meet sharpened stakes and a dense hedge of spears, the sight and the noise can still make the front rank waver. If one or two step out of place and a gap appears, the forward weight will find it. That is why infantry officers put seasoned men in the first row, men who can keep eyes front and knees from giving. Then the cavalry point meets stake heads. The impact bleeds off. The horses slide along the flank and the infantry line remains whole. When there is no opening, the shock to the mind diminishes greatly. Field exercises simulate that moment. One group of riders sweeps across in front of the infantry block at a safe distance, making the sound and dust of a direct charge. The drill master orders the infantry to stand fast, eyes on the command flag, not on the horses, and not lowering their spears too soon. Afterward, the two groups trade places so that the foot soldier understands the rider's view, and the rider sees what the spear ranks look like from the saddle. Crossed practice like this makes both sides judge each other more soberly and learn to break the other's posture by method, not by hope. Long campaigns wear down even the best units. In the rainy season, mud clings to the wheels. In the dry season, dust clings to the throat. Tents must be pitched and struck many times. Ropes must be aired again because of damp. Cold wind drives through gaps in clothing, and those who do not change in time will take a chill to the lungs. Some units march for weeks along roads with little clean water, and must drink weak beer and watered wine to avoid stomach sickness. Rations are cut at the end of the month because pay arrives late. The strong flag as well. By night, a light refrain of coughing spreads through the camp, the lamps going out row by row. At dawn, the guy lines must be hauled tight again because they have slackened, like a reminder of simple things that cannot be neglected. Disease is the enemy with no banner. Crowded camps that face the wrong way in the wind and fail to dig ditches will pool dirty water. New arrivals are prone to unfamiliar local ailments. Units kept long in the open field raise blisters on their feet, rub their hips raw and develop infected nails and cuticles. The healer walks the ranks and inspects each wound. He scrapes the edges clean with a knife, dusts on herb powder and binds with clean cloth. Not every unit has such a man. So many places lay down rules for latrines, for wastewater, for washing hands. Small rules save lives. Anyone who has lived through a season of pestilence knows this in the deepest way. When the weather is dry and the roads are open, units often rehearse signals. Brass horns play short phrases, each tied to an order. The drums beat a burst, a flag lifts a corner, an aide repeats in a voice just loud enough for the file. These layered signals make sure commands are not lost when one channel is drowned by noise. Where the wind is strong, horns carry better than drums. Where dust blinds the air, flags carry where the eye fails. Such things lay the groundwork for an army that keeps order when conditions shift. It is not only discipline and drill grounds that steady the spirit. Many armies carry relics and priests. Before marching out they hold a rite, speak brief blessings and lay hands on the holy things. On quiet evenings small hymns are sung, one voice linking the next like a cord that keeps hearts from fraying. Piety does not make a sword sharper, but it gives the sword hand a meaning to endure for. Faith may be a token as small as an old coin, a strip of sacred cloth or a prayer taught by a mother. At the most exhausted moment, someone touches the thing he keeps, breathes in and finds another mile in his legs. Soldiers' songs also bind a formation together. They are not loud and not shouted, just a slow beat with words that are easy to remember. When the right foot must fall on already tamped ground, the song keeps the steps even. In fog this sound stretches across the camp like a taut thread. It calls back those whose minds have drifted to the common rhythm. Units with this habit often look calmer when relocating in the night. There are not always rites and songs. Some days the tents are barely up before rain falls. The cook fire dies twice. The meat pot never quite simmers before the call to move comes. The cook shakes his head at the pot. The sentry drives extra pegs to tighten the tarps. Not until late does each person receive a dipper of boiled water, bite a piece of hard bread and lie down in a wet shirt. On days like that, discipline keeps grips from slipping. The practiced know to wrap leather, to stuff straw into boots, to fold clothes in a way that hides the seams. Such small habits make the difference when weather and roads turn their backs. Pay is the unpoetic part that everyone remembers. The muster roll is read at the start of the month. Wages are paid by period. When payment is late, grumbling begins. Many units strive to pay on time to avoid unrest. Where records are kept well, a man's pay comes with notes on days of service, weapons issued and equipment to be returned upon discharge. Where times are chaotic, pay comes in kind, in grain or in salt. A wise commander knows that hunger and debt breed more disorder than the enemy's blows. He keeps the paymaster near, not far from the map table. Clear-headedness in war is not only seeing plainly, it is the ability not to confuse a moment with a whole battle, not to take one memorable image as the single standard. An old hand knows where cavalry is useful, when to halt the horses and plant a stake line, when to sit and let the infantry push. A young soldier learns to accept that a good day may begin in mud and end in mud. All of this comes from training. On the grounds they learn not to hurry at a scream, not to stop for a stray arrow, not to leave the ranks for hoofbeats. When the ground becomes the field, those lessons do their work. In the maze of battle, the seemingly small things make a lifeline. A dry bowstring, boots with intact soles, a well-honed knife, a stake set at the right angle, a ditch cut to suit the wind. They link together by discipline and habit. They keep the formation from breaking when a horn is muffled. They keep spirits from collapsing when it rains 5 days in a row. Then, when the order horn sounds, all the rehearsed parts mesh and a calm chain of actions appears. Some will say that is the quietest kind of beauty in soldiering. Not dazzling, but durable. At the end of a long day, the sentries change, walking past the rows of tents to see whether the lines have slackened. In the kitchen, the cook shakes a little more salt into the thin soup, and sets aside a small share for the last watch. In the command tent, the candle gutters low, the day's entries folded and laid on the top of the stack. Repeated, such tasks let a column travel farther, linger longer and withstand stronger winds. There is no secret beyond what anyone can see. The difficulty is doing it steadily, and discipline is the reminder that makes steadiness. Next morning the drill field is damp with dew again, bowstrings sigh again. The quinton turns on its spindle again. Stakes stand in straight rows again. No one waits for the next battle to prepare. Preparation is most of fighting. In that steady rhythm, minds are braced by simple pillars, bodies by right habits, formations by clear conventions, seen up close. The medieval battlefield appears not as a many-coloured painting, but as a great workshop where people keep their hands to time and keep their hearts in line to weather the storm season. Night settles over the camp like a thick blanket. Oil lamps are scattered thinly. Narrow pools of light touch scarred plates of armour. From the far line of tents a low even song rises, a short refrain repeating like the stroke of oars. The guard detail changes, cloaks pulled close at the neck. It is the moment a soldier looks into himself after a long day, where bodily endurance and a steadier spirit meet. The greatest pressure is not when spear point meets shield, but in the waiting. When it is still dark, a soldier stands in the line and listens to the horn test in silence. The ground underfoot is cold and his hand rests on the haft of a familiar weapon. Many units keep small rites before stepping off. Some recite a brief petition, some touch the standard, some pass a keepsake from hand to hand. These things do not replace thick armour or long spears. They tie those who stand close together into a body that is hard to shake. In tactics, the cavalry shock remains significant. Anyone who has stood in the first rank remembers the sound of hooves hammering the ground, a noise that runs through the chest before it reaches the ear. To prepare, infantry practice, keeping eyes forward and shoulders and hips from yielding. They learn to set the spear shaft at the right angle. They trust the men on either side. Calm against panic is built from exact habits. When the line does not loosen, the charge is half spent. When the line loosens, everything collapses fast. That is why every drill aims at that unloosened state. The shock does not come only on horseback. It comes from the eruption of all the senses at once. Smoke from the cook fires lingers in the air. Sweat mixes with mud with the smell of rust. New men are easily stifled by so many strange things at once. Experienced formations give the recruits a frame to lean on. That frame has sound, has beat, has clear orders. When the beat holds firm, the mind finds its breath again. The longest day of a campaign is not only the day of fighting. A column may pass through weeks of cold rain, sudden mildness and cold again. The blisters at the heel are more bothersome than a stray arrow. Then discipline keeps order from breaking. The campmaster checks the water casks, the lashings and the drainage trenches. The quartermaster issues rations almost by scale. Grumbling remains, but rules do not change. Each day passes alike in its main lines and differs in small details, and it is the likeness that keeps the unit from falling apart. Psychology also lives in the rhythm of trust. In a block of infantry, each person sees a very narrow slice. If they trust the standard bearer, the hornman and the caller of cadence, they will hold their place. If they doubt, their eyes search outside. The most famous picture of panic is the man who leaves the ranks and pulls the whole file with him. To prevent this, many commanders choose positions where they can be seen easily. Speak little but speak rightly, and do not change orders at the last minute unless forced. Consistency is the largest fund of morale, and camp soldiers have exercises meant for the mind. Some units recount old actions in a plain way. No embellishment and no verdicts. They count the steps from the stake line to the point of contact. They speak of small mistakes that cost a side. They remind each other of places where the wind shifted. Such sessions shrink the unknowns, and when the unknown shrinks, the faceless fear also falls. Fear of a thing you know is easier to handle than fear of a shadow. Between discipline and personal faith stands the role of symbols. Many armies carry relics. The holy object moves behind the colours. Before going to the field, the ranks pass it slowly. Some bow the head, some touch, some only look. Devotion provides an unseen staff to lean on when the wind rises. No one says the object makes spear points sharper. Everyone understands it steadies the hand. Where it is cold and exhausting, the steady hand is of great worth. From the commander's view, morale is part of the plan. He reads the ground and chooses places where his men strain least. He has them practice forming up in heavy mud, stepping through narrow ditches and turning about on sloped earth. He keeps meals on time if he can, because a steady stomach steadies the head. When a meal must be dropped, he says so beforehand. When sleep must be broken, he sets the watches fairly. People endure better when they know why. That plain knowing keeps nerves from burning out. Longbowmen have a cast of mind of their own. Their practice repeats for years. Each draw is a test of patience. They do not always shoot at a human shape. Many days they aim at a plain cloth only to keep their arrows falling inside a marked zone. That mindset carries into battle as a quiet rhythm. When a volley is called, they do not let feeling lead and listen only for the whistle. When they must stop, they stop on the beat. Simplicity protects them against the turmoil of smoke and dust. A good rider has his own kind of calm. In the saddle his heartbeat pairs with the horses. He feels the ground through his ankles on the stirrups. He He knows when to take in the reins, when to let the shoulders loosen so the lance shakes less. The bond between man and horse is a cushion for his spirit. In the confused minute, he still trusts the animal that has gone through many seasons with him. As the foot soldier trusts the comrade at his shoulder, the knight trusts his mount. Every column has veterans and newcomers. Veterans say very few grand things. They remind you how to hide a small knife in a boot to cut a strap if you are snagged. They point out the drier patch of earth for planting a stake. They share a trick to keep the hand from going numb while gripping a haft through a whole watch. Such nameless tips do not appear in books, yet they transmit calm. New men learn to think in small tasks, and when the head is busy doing the right work, there is no room for fear to swell. When spirits sag, units have ways to lift them. Some cancel a drill period to mend boots and tent cloth. Some issue a little extra salt. Some bring back an old song. Some tidy the field so that anyone who looks sees order. None of this is small. Orderliness is a kind of promise. It says that tomorrow will still have a pattern and that the rhythm of life has not been broken. In the wind, such a promise is enough to let the weary sleep a whole watch. Fear has another face called haste. Young soldiers tend to rush after a sharp sign. Discipline teaches them to count to 3. Counting to 3 sounds simple, yet it is an important barrier. 3 beats are enough for the eye to run from the colours to the file, from the file to the ground, from the ground to one's own hands. 3 beats are enough to lower the blade and prepare to parry. In those beats, the cresting wave of fear turns into focus. Units that keep this habit usually suffer fewer losses from small mistakes. Sometimes spirits break not from fear, but from boredom. Campaigns are long, the road repeats, the scenery changes little, and people miss home. Boredom leads easily to carelessness. You see a frayed rope and do not replace it. You see loose hobnails and hesitate. You see a comrade err and dislike to speak. A good commander notices the signs early. He rotates duties, swaps people to new places for a time, and introduces a few drills unlike the usual. He restates the aim in short words, without haranguing. He lets the cooks change the menu when the chance appears. The new taste is enough to recreate the sense of moving forward. Battle does not work with flowery words. It works with people. Morale is therefore tied to very practical questions. Can I still stand? Is the man beside me still holding steady? Is the colour-bearer still in place? Each answer may be a nod. Those nods join into a wall. That wall does not blaze, yet it holds against the surge. Speaking of devotion calls for a careful tone. No yardstick can measure a sacred object's effect on an outcome. What can be seen is the presence of right in daily life. Many units keep hours for prayer. Many have a song reserved for the evening. Many set a lamp in a fixed corner of the camp. Such lines of habit are like painted marks along a riverbank. They keep the flow from cutting through. Looking back, training and discipline do not stop at the drill yard. They spread into how people tie ropes, stow knives, pitch tents, and speak briefly but adequately. They run along the seams of garments, the edge of cloth at the neck, and the wraps that hold hard bread in a bag. An army that endures the long seasons is one that turns small things into pillars. That endurance is not brilliant, yet it decides whether they have strength enough to hear the last order, and calm enough to walk the last mile. Night falls again, the watch turns over once more, the singing ceases and only the sound of boots on the ground remains. The wind carries the smell of fire mingled with damp grass. In the dark strip between 2 lines of tents, someone sits and touches an edge to a knife. At the gate, a bugler tests a very small note and then is still. That quiet is not fragile. It is the result of a day with a rhythm and of a group holding one another in the right places. Tomorrow will bring mud and rain and a withdrawal order and an advance order. Yet with the rhythm already in hand, the soldier knows he will get through. From longbow to crossbow, from spear to halberd, from knight to infantryman, from ration store to tent row, everything ties together with a common cord of right habit. That habit keeps the mind clear amid the shouting. It does not make a brilliant tale. It makes a solid truth, seen close. It is the plain beauty of the soldier's craft, and not showy, not rash. Still standing, still breathing, still doing one's part so the whole line can move on. Dawn mist lays a quiet hue over the stone roofs within the town. In the great hall, torchlight throws gold onto a tapestry of streaming banners, straight driving horses and helmets polished like mirrors. Between those 2 layers of image lies a distance that has nudged centuries of memory off reality. That memory did not arise by itself. It was fed by laudatory words, by courtly performances and by pictures placed where people naturally look up. Chivalric literature is the first layer. From songs that recite achievements to long chivalric romances, scribes and singers chose a world with almost no mud, no runnels, no days spent waiting for the rain to stop so boots could be dried. They erected a clear measure of honour. The strong and the weak are cast in decisive roles. A single duel settles everything. The bright sweep of the blade makes the panting and the smell of rusty metal fall silent. Those lays have rules of their own to aid memory. Steady rhythm, repeating motifs, images simple and strong. The listener needs only a few pegs to hold to, a colour of cloak, a slogan, an oath. Such things pass easily through a long winter. Follow a merchant to the next market and climb onto the storyteller's bench in a tavern. When the wording is smoothed so well, the rough grain of a soldier's life is naturally planned away. Literature is also nourished by what readers want. Court, nobility, and even wealthy townsfolk look for pages that praise lofty qualities. The hireling needs his pay on time. The landholder needs renown to shore up power. A handsome tale helps to do that work. Field history is not an enemy of beauty, but it does not serve that need. Hence, the brilliant varnish has a firm social base on which to persist. In those same pages, the sword often appears as the absolute emblem of authority. The infantry spear point and the long axe haft are only occasionally mentioned as mere auxiliaries. Out on the field, though, it is the infantry spear that holds the line before the horses rush. It is polearms that strip armour at the awkward seams. The disjunction between symbol and technical function trains collective memory to suppose that the battlefield pivots around a single weapon. That imagining endures because each fresh telling polishes the emblem a little more. From literature, the tale steps onto the stage. The joust at a court festival looks like battle, but is not battle. The space is pre-built. The run is straight. Valour is performed within calculated bounds of safety. Many rules shield the entrance and the lineages of their houses. The stands are packed. Standards flicker in kindly sun. Everything is aimed at the dramatic instant of impact. What the crowd takes home is the roar. What memory keeps is a straight, unslipping charge. In reality, a muddy field can snap all such straight lines with a single rein. Court keeps its wall hangings and its weaving too. A long tapestry wraps a great wall and tells by a chain of scenes. Each frame is a moment arranged with arms set, heads up, shields lowered to balance. The patron wants to see an ancestor at the centre of a bright panel. The artisan obliges with balanced layout, fine colour, a thick sheen of metal. The ungainly details of a campaign are pushed to the margin. A chipped iron pot, a torn shoe, a hard cake broken to crumbs seldom find a place on velvet. Hung for years in warm air, those stately images grow to seem self-evident. Visitors lift their eyes once and then again. In time, the eye remembers in place of the ear. In those halls, heraldry also does the work of memory. Colours, beasts and mottos are pared down to be known from afar. That simplification helps on the field when allies must be told apart. Used to tell a story, it bends the shape. A block of flags cannot say they went 3 days without clean water. A shield cannot recall the lump of hard ration that stood in for supper. A motto cannot tell how tired the colour-bearer was before roll call. A symbol does the work of a symbol. Taken as the whole account, the symbol unwittingly presses reality out of frame. Alongside the solemn layer runs popular performance. Storytellers at markets, in taverns, at the gate must live on the small coins of their audience. To keep listeners from drifting off, they choose tight incidents, neat punchlines and clean fight scenes. So comic variants of the knightly figure appear. Though the tone differs, this performance still clings to a simple scheme of opposition. It makes the public remember a battle as two waves crashing, while in truth there are countless hours of waiting and arranging. Many courts also kept travelling troops. On a wooden stage, scant props force the director to adopt conventional devices. A drum stands for hoofbeats, green or blue cloth stands for a river, a small pennon stands for an army. Collective memory, fond of images that are clear and easily grasped, quickly favours such conventions. The success of Sign on Stage leads people to believe that war is a chain of emblems rather than a craft that demands organisation. The mechanism of handing stories down plays a part too. A father tells his son the region's old tales. The son grows to be a gate guard and tells them to the next. Each round of telling trims away tangled detail. What remains is the axle of honour and courage. Logistics and sickness and weariness cave in after a few seasons of wind. Collective memory is like a river. On its way to the sea, sharp pebbles are worn round, square fragments of story are carried off. When only smooth cobbles remain, everyone thinks the stones were born that way. There is another element seldom named. Many chroniclers of the medieval centuries relied on patrons. Their notes therefore tilt naturally toward what helps the client standing. Failed campaigns are pared down. Those who died of exhaustion seldom have names. Triumphs are linked into chains that bend even time. Not every chronicle is thus. There are candid pages, there are jottings about long rain and hard frost. Yet the pretty pages are the ones most readily copied. The more copies, the louder the voice. When printing spread, memory was set in lead. Illustrations built on patterns fixed decades earlier kept recurring. To save plates, the printer often altered the caption, and not the image. A night against a fair sky can serve many different tales. That convenience unwittingly prolonged the life of the template. Readers of broadsheets and thin books care little for technical accuracy. They need a familiar frame to step into. The cuts give them that. All these layers are not deceptions. They serve the purposes of their ages. Literature teaches the young to dream of honour. Performance knits a community around a peaceful holiday. Heraldry enables swift recognition in peace and in war. The storyteller earns bread by laughs and claps. Cheap engravings carry news into many hands, but when they are fused into a portrait of how soldiers truly fought, confusion appears, not out of malice, because convenience and taste have let the same choices repeat too long. Amid all that repetition, the field history is still there. It lies in the expense books of the stores. It lies in letters home that complain of rain and illness. It lies in camp ordinances that state watch hours and how to divide rations. It lies in finds from abandoned campsites such as hobnails, arrowheads, worn belts. These reticent witnesses are not as lovely as tapestries, not as lively as a stage, not as rousing as a tavern yarn. They are simply durable and even, like the breathing of a formation on a muddy field. Set the two bodies of material side by side and the skew shows at once. On one side are images filtered to be striking and easy to keep. On the other are scattered but truthful data. Collective memory naturally chooses the first. When comparison is called for, the task is not to erase the old, but to return each thing to its proper place. Literature keeps the role of inspiration. Performance keeps the role of connection. Symbol keeps the role of recognition. History keeps the role of recording what happened under specific conditions. So, to grasp why shared memory drifts, one must trace the paths of the beautiful, the convenient and the useful. Those three forces draw the tale toward patterns easy to hold. When a pattern fits many hands, it becomes habit. Habit that lasts long enough masquerades as truth. At that point, restoring the story to its root is not a noisy quarrel. It is a light-handed task of setting each detail back into context. It lowers no one's honour and mocks no one's taste. It merely takes the glare out of the picture. Across centuries, lays, festival stages, tapestries and cheap cuts have kneaded the memory of warfare. In that frame, the cavalry's charge always shows clearer than the ruts of bog water. The opening trumpet rings louder than the stick tapping a lid to call a meal. When the sources are put in their places, one can see why communal memory takes the brilliant and neglects the quiet. Knowing this rule helps make the search for the soldier's traces less rough. The picture then emerges slowly and evenly, so the raw fibre of reality can rise of itself beneath warm light. The great forecourt before the Spring Palace. Light-coloured tents are set out in rows, cloth banners embroidered with beasts fly in the light wind. The drum, the trumpet and the clatter of the hooves make a steady rhythm. This is a tourney, not a battlefield. Yet centuries later, when people recall medieval war, the images from this yard are laid over the memory of real mud flats, ditch banks and rain. The court's stately mode of performance mixed with soldiers' lives and then became a handsome mask for a hard profession. In a tourney, every detail has a purpose. Colours on tunics separate sides so the audience can follow. Large shields painted with heraldry help the judge see who won and who lost. The list is strewn with sand. A rail protects the knight when a horse veers. The lances used in contest are weakened so they break easily and do not pierce through. The stage builds a bounded world in which danger is measured. Rhythm is prearranged and victory takes a beautiful form. The relative safety of ritual gave rise to the feeling that soldiering is mainly arranged glory. That feeling clung for a very long time, through poetry, through tapestry, through paintings. Chivalric literature nourishes that feeling. In its verses, the sword-bearer always knows his goal and knows the name of the virtue he defends. The clash becomes a test of morals. When an army loses, the tale is often turned so that loyalty is honoured. When a knight falls, death becomes an offering, with no mud, no cold rain, no weight of wet armour. On the page, staged rhythm replaces the heavy step out on the field. Readers long accustomed to that rhythm then press it onto every other battle. Courtly art extends literature's effect. Tapestries in the Great Hall often tell a battle by flat fields of colour and crisp lines. Every arrow can be seen. Every plate gleams. Every banner is fully unfurled. There is no thick smoke to blind the eye. There are no horse carcasses blocking the way. In order to tell clearly, the weaver arranges figures in layers, trims what would clutter and compresses a long day into a few large scenes. This way of telling is pleasing to the eye and easy to remember, yet it unwittingly flattens a reality that is overlapping and disorderly. Religious pageants and civic ceremonies in the streets also play a part. In processions there are soldiers with spears at the head. There are gonfalons and there are drums. Wooden and cloth props simulate a siege. Children standing along the road grow up with such forms. When they are grown, many will think of war in the shapes they saw on feast days, even while knowing those are only symbols. Once a visual memory has latched onto childhood, it holds firmer than reason. From royal halls to a painter's canvas and then to the silver screen of the recent century, the path of myth has not been broken. Cinema is especially strong at creating the illusion of scale and tempo. The camera favours what is striking and legible. A cavalry charge satisfies both. On an open plain, a line of lances dips, horses surge, dust rises, the score swells. The viewer at once understands that a decisive moment is coming. Meanwhile, shots of soldiers digging drainage, planting stakes, or an orderly sharing out hot rations are not easy to stage. These tasks matter and can decide the balance but lack outward tensions. When forced to choose, a director will devote frames to movement that reads more clearly. Film also has its own constraints. Light needs reflective surfaces, so armour on screen often shines. In the field, metal is seldom mirror bright because of mud and sweat, road dust and rain. The camera must see actors' faces, so visors are often raised higher than in reality. Real-world formations are rarely as ruler straight as on a backlot where a director can place each extra in a neat file. Managing crowds demands tidy staging that avoids excess chaos because it is hard to edit. These constraints are not bad. They help the story flow, yet precisely for that reason, viewers absorb a visual language already filtered of confusion. Sound plays a role too. A real battle sounds heavy. There's the rough twang of bowstrings, hooves stumbling out of time in a muddy hole, breath heaving as armour tightens the chest. On film the sound is mixed clean, emphasising the ring of blades and the score. That tidy sensation feeds a simplifying notion that events unfold plainly and decisively. In life, many decisions come from long fatigue, from an empty stomach, from a rope that snaps at the wrong time. There is also the habit of compressing time. A campaign of many weeks is cut to a few minutes. Provisions arrive after a transition. Waiting out the rain, sickness spreading in the camp, replacing bowstrings, oiling an axle, all vanish. When a narrative keeps only the peaks, common memory keeps only the peaks. What lies between them is forgotten, though it is what keeps the whole war machine going. The mounted knight's image gains the most from that compression. A single shock is presented as the deciding blow. The reality is more complex. Cavalry needs firm ground, room to form up in coordination with infantry. An enemy may plant stakes, open ditches, or use rain and mud to slow horses. Yet those steps of preparation seldom fit inside a handsome frame, so common memory gradually equates victory with the picture of cavalry rushing in. This is not harmless. When a symbol grows too strong, viewers tend to slight the discipline of foot formations and the skill of the men who plant the stakes. From old pages to modern epics, one quiet rule repeats. Things with rhythm, colour and sound that are easy to remember will steer memory. Things that demand patience. Numbers, maps and logs will sink to the background. In some medieval military history, the second group is the framework. It determines the power to assemble, to march, to endure. Yet in the collective imagination, the first group always wins. Not because it is truer, but because it is stronger to the senses. Confusion lasts because media copy one another by reflex. One fine painting begets another. A successful scene becomes the model for the next. Each copy trims more detail. Once a formula forms, thus the image is nearly untouchable. A storyteller who wants to differ must weigh the cost, since the audience awaits the familiar signals. This inertia makes correction harder. Even so, one should not treat the whole storytelling tradition as an enemy of truth. Many works strive to lower the glare and make room for detail. Some films dim the image, lengthen the cut, soften the score, and let the viewer feel the weight of armour moving through mud. Some novels describe meals of hard biscuit, the division of water, a night broken by coughing. Such attempts do not destroy the symbol. They ask the symbol to step aside so that reality can stand with it. Understanding the rules of memory is not to reject the beauty of the festival. The tourney has its own value. It is training within bounds, a chance for a community to see itself and a way for the sword-bearing class to remind itself of the standards it claims. The problem begins when people take the tourney ground as the mould for the battlefield. Where there are helmets and helms, a straight back is admirable. Where there is wet fuel and long rain, a pot of stew shared fairly among a squad is noteworthy. When both places are set in one frame, we see why brilliance so easily defeats endurance. Cinema of the recent century adds another layer. The global market presses for stories that can be grasped at once. Running time must be short. Viewers in many cultures need a shared dictionary of images. Cavalry charges, trumpet peals, banners fill a corner of the frame, and that dictionary is convenient. It carries meaning quickly. It does not ask the viewer to know the difference between a pike and a billhook, between a crossbow and a longbow. Yet that convenient dictionary also freezes a way of seeing. Like an old track across a field turned into ruts by wheels. Another reason collective memory misfires is a taste for simple causes. In one battle, dozens of factors run together. Weather, ground, rations, health, morale. A misunderstanding between two units. A signal blown off course by wind. Each contributes a part, but a story needs a clear fulcrum. Authors often choose one visible event as the explanation. In time, readers believe every victory has a single key. Truth is softer than that. Look into the base of life and one sees why brilliant images attract. They propose a world with order, where courage is rewarded, treachery punished, honour shines. Medieval reality is messy, splintered and uncertain. People need stories to rest at night. No one sleeps well on the sound of rain on canvas. Wind hissing through an arrow slit and a horse chain knocking against a post. Yet if collective memory keeps only reels, tapestries and lays, soldiering loses its own voice. The way out is not to smash the symbol, but to set it beside the ledger. Set a picture of a cavalry rush next to a march diary that notes the days lost to storms. Set a siege tapestry beside a list of stones for the trebuchet and the tools for mining. Set a film scene of lowered spears beside the regulations for placing stakes. When both kinds of sources stand together, people begin to hear steady breathing under the score and begin to see mud spatters on bright armour. Once seen, memory balances itself. From that, a simple observation appears. Myth serves the emblem. History records the deed. The emblem needs a fine angle. The deed needs time. The emblem moves by the trumpet. The deed moves by the earth. Both have a place. What a program of storytelling can do is keep the tempo slow. Pick up the quiet details and let shared memory see that behind the banners there is not magic. There are hands and calendars. When the quiet part is full enough, the brilliant things remain beautiful but no longer mislead. The stage always chooses light. The battlefield chooses weather. When memory follows the stage, it forgets the work of grey clouds, mud and the dated page. Beautiful stories possess their own inertia. A poem praising honour that crosses centuries will harden into a yardstick for every clash. A tapestry in a great hall that dwells on the upright seat in the saddle will teach a visual language. One successful film will be the pattern for 10 more. With each copy, the rough patches of reality drop away. What remains are sharp lines, strong colours and driving rhythms. They are easy to recall, but they are not the whole picture. To see why shared memory slips, one only needs to set a day on film beside a day in the ledger. On film, the host moves without pause like a river of steel. In the expense book, the same day shows up as entries for pay, for hard biscuit, for horses dead of weariness, for the ill-excused from watch. The two accounts do not contradict. They simply look at two layers of the same reality. When the second layer vanishes from memory, the first swells and takes its place. The mechanism of slippage also lies in the habit of choosing milestones. The storyteller naturally aims at a deciding instant, a cavalry dash, a gate bursting open, a standard changing hands. Yet the war machine runs on many small gears. The humidity of bowstrings after rain, the line of a water channel against the path of advance, whether the stakes were set at the planned intervals, whether the supply boat reached the river on time, no single gear attracts the camera. Only the whole array creates the true rhythm. In the court, performance exalts form. Out on the field, discipline keeps people alive. Mistake arises when their roles are swapped. Ritual makes ferocity look polite. Reality asks the spear-bearer to restrain himself, keep the file and creep by whistles. This is a spare beauty that myth rarely tells. It does not dazzle, so it struggles to stay in common memory unless buttressed by words and numbers. Part of the confusion comes from the need for comfort. Popular history prefers simple answers because they soothe. To say the loser lacked courage sounds gentler than to say his supply line was cut. To say the winner struck a decisive blow sounds more exciting than to say he planted stakes half an hour earlier. But a quiet night bought by a story does not change what happened on the ground. Those who want to step closer to truth must accept conclusions that are less dramatic. There are small ways to draw memory back toward Earth without losing the beauty of the tale. The first way is to set images next to numbers. A picture of cavalry charging placed beside a march log noting days halted for rain. The second is to set emblem next to tool. A hymn to honour read with an armoury list of weapons and armour, sealed in wax and signed by the keeper. The third is to set festival beside regulation. A film clip of a joust compared to drill rules that note file spacing, the angle for levelling lances and the signal for changing formation. When both faces of evidence appear, collective memory begins to shift. People see why thick walls do not fall from a single blow, why a siege tower has big wheels and a roof, why sappers must shore their tunnel with green timbers so it does not collapse. The pace of telling slows a little to match the pace of doing. Endurance then has a chance to stand as something to praise rather than only a dim backdrop. There is another point that easily trips memory. The blur between the time of art and the time of a campaign. Art chooses moments. A campaign uses days and weeks. A scene of 3 minutes can hold a whole afternoon. A tapestry can hold a whole season. If one grows used to seeing by moments, one imagines that war is a chain of peaks end to end. In truth, there are flats between the peaks. Flats are where a soldier resets bowstrings, oils axles, dries armour, and counts usable arrows. Flats are also where fatigue collects and where chances germinate. If the flats are left out, memory keeps only steep slopes and will be tired. We cannot blame poetry for choosing the beautiful parts. We cannot blame cinema for having to tell its story in 2 hours, but we can remind each other that, to be fair to history, we need an underlayer of dry sources. By underlayer here I mean tax records, mercenary contracts, handwritten orders and payroll registers. These things look dry and read slowly, yet they keep the true rhythm of soldiering. When the tale is set beside the documents, a basic clarity returns. The sword is still beautiful, but it is not king. Cavalry is still imposing, but it does not smash everything alone. The longbowman is admirable, but he does not shoot without end. Plate harness is ingenious, yet it still loses to deep mud and a muddy slope. The trebuchet is strong, but it needs craftsmen and wood, time to balance the counterweight and stones of the right size. A city gate is durable, but fears fire when the rain does not come. All of it layers over itself into a thick cloth that fits the hand. Misunderstanding also drags along a wrong view of those on the margins. Legend prefers to speak of royalty and knights. History must also record the blacksmith, the raftman, the drover, the wheel mender and the water bearer. Without them an army cannot go far. They have no place on the festival cloth. But on the route map, each inn, each river landing, each granary is a link in the chain. Put those people into the frame and the shared memory grows warmer and truer. We should also recall the role of faith, relics, prayers. Oaths and badges on the tunic are supports for the spirit. Art paints them in a golden light. The truth is that they share space with mud, rain, and the smell of south for wounds. These two layers do not cancel each other. They stand side by side in the same kit of the spirit. Remembered that way, memory grows less extreme. It falls neither into blind praise nor into cold doubt. Finally, a small image can steady the memory. On the wooden table in the command tent there are 2 things, a wax seal and a pen. The seal is pressed on orders. The pen draws lines in the paybook. Orders cannot move if the ledger does not balance. The ledger is meaningless if the orders are wrong. Myth is like the seal, history is like the pen, they must stand together. Once this picture sticks in the mind, each time a viewer watches a cavalry charge, they will ask where the supply train is. Each time a reader meets a poem that praises honour, they will also picture the blacksmith working late. The step of a good formation is not as strident as festival music. It is even and low. Collective memory, if it wants to be right, must learn that tempo. Hear the wind first and only then the trumpet. Look at the ground first and only then the flags. Count those still standing and only then the medals. When that habit becomes natural, myth still has a place in the Great Hall. But the muddy field outside will not be erased. At this point, the answer to the question posed at the start of the chapter is clearer. Shared memory goes astray because it likes the shortcut, the bright light, and the summit. History needs the full road, the shade and the flat stretch. The two ways of seeing serve different ends. One nourishes the community's spirit. The other keeps faith with the truth. A programme for telling history can do a simple and important job, which is to tie the two sides back together with tough threads. Those threads are mud, rain, hard biscuit, discipline, the blacksmith, the gate guard and the grain boat. When those strands are strung in, the mythic picture is not torn, it is simply less slick. It has enough friction for the listener to lay a hand on it and feel warmth. There is no need to erase the dream of bright banners. We only need to set the dream beside the ledger, beside bowstrings hung to dry, beside wet boots laid straight toward the fire. Then the collective memory can still be beautiful without being mistaken. And in the quiet moment of night, when the wind moves past the thin tent, the true picture will come clear. A patient craft, an art of organisation and a working history without noise. Early morning lays a film of moisture over the ground before the encampment. On the fine mud, rows of boot prints line up straight, like grid lines for a long day. The formation stands still. Leather whispers against steel. There is no shouted call, only orders falling evenly like raindrops. All move to the same beat, just enough to keep warmth, just enough to check straps, buckles, clasps and grips. The beauty of soldiering begins here, with things in their right places. The distance between two men is measured by a spear shaft held slantwise. The spear tips brush the dew. One rank shifts half a foot, the rank behind follows. On ground threaded with grass roots, the steps make no heavy stamp. That silence is a kind of economy. It saves strength and it saves the opponent's attention. When the formation locks tight, the small gaps vanish. There is no place for a stray spear, no space for an enemy's arrow to slip in. That order does not flaunt itself, yet it holds the lives of a whole face of men. Anti-cavalry stakes are brought in from the camp edge. Dry wood has been shaved already. The sharp end's the colour of ripe grain. The stake detail paces off the intervals by arm span. The first stake bites into damp soil. The second sits at the exact distance that no horse's legs can thread through. One man sets. One tamps the earth. A third checks each angle toward the wind. The wind shifts. The stake angles shift with it. That careful work is what bright tapestries rarely show. Yet the same quiet work decides the endurance of a defensive line. Iron armour is not always bright. Across its face run scratches along the shield edge, small dents at the shoulder, a patch at the wrist seam. Each mark is a fragment of memory from an impact survived. The owner does not polish everything away. They oil the joints, check rivets, replace leather thongs that have perished. Armour is a work coat. It does not make the wearer a hero. It only lets a body take one more shock. Beauty comes from a sense of fit. A plate cups the elbow exactly, neither extra nor lacking. Every minute saved in movement is a drop of strength kept for the evening. The camp smith opens the bellows before the light is fully up. Coals glow. The quench tub sits by the door. The hammer beats to a familiar time, unhurried, unshowy. From the tents, people bring what needs repair, a bent spearhead, a chipped arrow point, a sprung cuirass catch. Between the draught through the tent seams and the smell of coal, the smith's rhythm keeps the formation able to fight. A rivet hole trued to size lets a shoulder joint avoid catching during a turn. An axe edge re-tempered to ring cleaner lets its wielder save one swing. Bit by bit, the whole unit grows trim. Rain comes, the ration store opens its book. Hard bread is issued per head. There is nothing enticing in that biscuit. Dry! Hard! It snaps when broken. A soldier dips it in watered wine or hot water to soften it. On a rainy day, The discipline of sharing is a different kind of beauty. Those on watch eat first, those tending the tarps eat after. The sick person's portion is sent through a squad mate. When everyone follows this small order, calm returns more easily. No quarrels, no blame. Only a row of worn wooden bowls and a low fire in a tent. The archers string their longbows. The cords in their forearms cross up in ridges, a look that marks the trade at once. There is no ritual beyond checking each waxed flax strand, wiping the grain of the wood, testing the bend at the point of cast. Arrows are stacked in bundles, feathers all aligned. The target is a straw butt set far off. Behind it a clear swath for the full back. The captain reads the shooting cadence like he would a breathing count. Loose, knock, lift, hold. Against the grey sky, a clutch of feathers opens and is gone. The beauty here lies in exact repetition taken to a strictness. Each motion at true measure sends the shaft on true flight. Each person at true tempo makes a real rain. On the far side of the drill ground, the long spear block practices changing facing. The body is square, 3 ranks to a side. The spear points make a moving wall. Inside the block you hear wood on wood, soles to earth, commands bouncing from corner to corner. The body wheels left, wheels right, opens, closes. A small error on the 3rd rank can pull a whole face into a bow and make a gap that costs, so the eyes of those inside do not look ahead. They look at a neighbour's shoulder and keep that shoulder where it should be. Trust in one another through muscle is a kind of beauty that is plain and lasting. The unit's standard hangs low, dipping lightly with the air. The bearer does not lift it high to boast. It sits where the eyes inside the formation can use it as a datum. When the ground ripples so that the flag shifts a short span for the outer ranks to correct on. No need to shout, no need to summon. That strip of cloth is a positioning tool. It helps the mass move across a shallow ditch, avoid a soft spot, crest a dry lip. A few such times and the wasteful kind of fatigue fades. By evening, the standard bearer still has strength for the way back. The skill of arranging for wind, water and earth shows clearest when a camp goes up on a hillside with a stream running through. Tent rows run along the contour, drainage holes are dug along the walkway. The kitchen is set in a natural lee. The ration store faces away from the woods to deter petty theft. The horse lines are separated from the sleeping area so the smell does not flood the rest. These layouts are not grand. They simply spare people sickness, slips and coughing through a watch. On a long campaign, that is the quietest beauty, for it has no handsome frame to hold it, yet it holds the spirit of the whole train. On the march, the step is tied to a small skin drum. The drum is not loud, it holds a mean pace. Not so fast that heavy armour must stop for breath, not so slow that weariness is stretched out. At the river the formation breaks itself into packets in order. A pontoon of rafts is waiting. The first rank steps on, the next keeps spacing so the bridge does not sway. Such small conventions add up to safety. On the far bank each person shakes the water from a hem of mail, adjusts wrist thongs, wipes a spear haft. No one hurries to show. All do what will keep them from paying at sundown. On a bright day the steel edges throw white flares. The commander signals to cloak the armour with rough cloth to cut the glare. The formation slides over stubble fields, avoiding cracked ground that can break a horse's leg. At the wood's edge, the front lowers spears. The rear shifts angle so the points do not snag low branches. From afar it does not look glorious. It looks like a crew at work. Yet doing work in order steadies the whole unit. That steadiness is the base of courage when needed. On the outside line, a few scouts on dark horses circle a swell. They say little, they see much. Fresh bog patches, deep or shallow hoof prints, a wind shift in open wood. Those signs come back as a few brief lines. The formation adjusts the route by a small share, skirting a trap of mire, saving an hour of wading. The beauty of organisation is sometimes only an early chosen bend in the path, leaving no mark in legend, yet leaving strength for tomorrow. By noon, armour is unbuckled in part for cooling. A soldier lays each piece on cloth, keeping wet soil off the joints. Spear shafts stand leaned against a tree, their heads wrapped so they do not nick. Helmets rest upside down, a leather pad inside to dry sweat. Such small care lengthens the life of tools and of those who use them. In a world where everything wears quickly, preserving soundness is a victory of its own. In the afternoon, the Ani cavalry stakes are pulled for the march. Before moving, The stakeman scratches a small sign on the ground to mark the place so the line can be rebuilt in little time if they return. On the road, they tell the new men how to choose spots on wet ground and how to read a wind shift from a blade of grass. Passing down happens like that, quiet, needing no praise. Knowledge flows along the cord of discipline, from old hands to new, from morning into evening. Dusk comes on, the camp is raised again on a higher knoll. The kitchen crew builds a low fire so the smoke does not betray the place. Tents go into the same pattern as the morning, turn to the new wind. The sentry walks the rows, pausing a beat at each tent to hear the breathing and see the shape within. Not to intrude, only to know who is coughing, who is fevered, who needs a watch changed. The beauty of the trade in this instant is a quiet care. It does not preen. It simply does the right task at the right time. In the dim firelight, armour is hung on lines to dry. Water beads fall from steel edges into black earth. On the plates, old scratches lie still like wood grain. A soldier rubs with cloth, not to erase the traces, only to keep the metal from rusting. Outside, the wind turns. Inside, the breaths are even. A day closes on a ledger of small jobs done. The formation is still full, the ties still tight, the stakes shaved and bound. Tomorrow may be different, yet this order is what will go with them over any ground. The quiet beauty of soldiering does not live in a single blaze of light. It lives in the fit between person and tool, between rule and weather, a rank held true, a stake set true, a scarred plate that still saves a life, the smith's rhythm, the equal ration of hard bread on a wet day, the drum that keeps a steady pace on a long road. All of it forms a language that needs no song. That language speaks of endurance, and that endurance, without noise, is what gives the craft its worth. The afternoon tilts, the tents darken like worn stone. The signal to change the watch passes by a chain of light touches, a hand on a shoulder, no names called. Those going out and those coming in set their steps to their breathing. Firelight is hooded by thin boards so the smoke runs with the wind. Beyond the ring of stakes, a sentry's shadow lies long on the wet grass, still as a brush stroke. Horses are led back to the tie line at the camp edge. A hand brushes hair along the lay of dried sweat. The girth is loosened one hole. White foam at the bit is wiped with a warm rag. Hooves are tapped, listening for hollow or solid. A loose nail is replaced at once, not left for morning. For cavalry, the beauty lies in even care. For a sound horse is what holds a line when a march runs on through bogs and slopes. A bucket of mash mixed with warm water sits by the rail. The smell of barley runs out and blends with straw, easing herd and handler both. At the corner of camp, the engineers bundle pliant branches. These bundles are woven into fat rolls used to cross mud patches or shore the ditch edges around the tents. The damp ground is cut into channels to carry the rain away. On the surface, fine straight lines, even like writing. Spare stakes are stacked in sheaves, their heads waxed against damp. Each thing, each piece, not showy, yet they turn an open field into a place one can live. In the smith's tent, the fire has cooled but keeps a trace of heat. The smith holds a newly filed rivet, tests it in a joint hole, then nods. There is no applause. There is only a joint that turns smooth again, so tomorrow an arm can lift a shield without a hitch. In the next tent, a bowstring is being laid up from waxed flax. Fingers twist evenly. The strand comes up flat with no burr. That is the kind of patience that doesn't perform. Yet it sends an arrow straight when the range is still dark before dawn. The crossbow crew opens their tool roll, breaks the gear down and wipes each slide. No damp remains on the metal. The sinew is dry, unriven. A crossbow does not rout cavalry with a single roar. It demands that the hand set the tiller true, reinforce the catch and keep the grip steady. Accuracy here is a quiet virtue. The ration store weighs salt and salt meat again. The slab is cut into equal parts and wrapped in thick cloth. Thin wine is metered by bowl, not to drink to drunkenness, only to make water safer. New hands learn to tie the bag knot so that in heavy rain the inside stays dry. In the ledger, a soot mark notes each squad's share. As the cold sinks, the straight line of wooden bowls is a kind of warmth. The quick brief is held in the open. The commander draws a map with a stick, marks the river with the board edge, marks woods with a spray of leaves. The ground speaks with real things, not long words. Scouts stand off to the side and add a new blot of mud, point to water pooling after the shower. The group looks down at the dirt and imagines the road ahead. A good plan is not showy. It simply keeps people from tripping their timing when the sun comes up. Night is near. The first watch checks the trip lines around the camp. Each peg is tested once. Each cord is pulled light for set. A bucket sits ready by the cook tent so no one runs to hunt water if a flame catches. A few small bells hang low, out of the wind's sway but set to tremble when a stranger steps near. All those cords, pegs and bells are not beautiful in light, yet they are the frame that holds quiet. Between the tents, a priest walks by with a small coffer in his arms. Inside is a relic or a thin book. He reads softly, urging no one to listen. Some fold hands, some simply look up for a moment and bend back to needle and thread. Devotion here is an unseen eve where the tired take shelter for a time. It is not for rousing. It only softens a hard edge enough that someone can sleep a watch. Night rain sometimes pays a visit, drumming on the tent like a light hand. The sentry shifts his stance so his nape stays dry. The cloak lies over the shoulders, the hem pulled to one side so the hands remain free. The rain passes and the earth is clean of dust. Laces on boots are checked again, for a loose lace can ruin a run. Such things do not inspire verse, yet they keep a small mishap from turning into a large quarrel. A little farther off, the carpenters mend a wagon tongue. A short rasping cut means the grain binds. A long smooth cut means the teeth are true. Pine pitch is boiled thick and brushed on a joint. When finished, the wagon looks no different than before, yet it will make less noise over ruts. On a battlefield, silence is an advantage as well. The beauty here lies in the instant the wheel rolls a trough without making a neighbour start. The night fire detail banks earth around the hearth and keeps the light low. The iron pot simmers, a hint of herbs flashes out and fades. Someone turns up a torn sleeve and stitches it with flax. The quilted liner of a helmet is rinsed in warm water and hung by the fire. These scraps of a soldier's day bind to one another through habit. Habit runs from hand to rule, from rule to safety. A small group drills signals in the dark. 3 knocks of wood, a pause, then 2 knocks. The pattern repeats until all know one another in shadow. The simple code is for use in thick fogs when a voice might give position to a stranger. No one praises such lessons. Yet when needed, one beat at the right time can pull a whole rank out of a trap. In the store, the keeper issues hand lanterns to the night patrol. The lamps are small, the covers tight. A slit of light enough to see tracks. The slit sweeps the ground, stops at a bent grass cord. The patrolman crouches, resets it, smooths the mark and moves on. A small act and forgotten at once, yet the night's duty is filled by such fragments. The wind turns and damp smells come up from the river. One part of the camp raises a temporary oilcloth screen, braced to let the air flow through instead of slamming the tent roofs. These details were learned in seasons past. The old hand does not lecture. He simply draws the edge to the right angle. The new hand watches, nods, and keeps it. That is how experience passes from one body to another. Near midnight, the patrol walks by the line of upright weapons. A bead of water sits on a spear tip, flashes and goes. A few spare arrows in a bundle are pulled and restacked true. A shield strap is loose at a peg. The patrolman leans in and sets another tack. Such acts do not go into the duty book, yet they keep an error from arriving at the worst moment. By a tree at the camp ring, a small knot of men sit still, each doing a repeating task, honing an edge, tying a knot, rubbing oil. There is no grand tale. They talk about a drier path around the marsh, about a thin patch of wood that could be a rally point, about shifting a watch for one just up from illness. The calm is sound as warm water. At dawn, that group will be the ones who lead the formation out without dropping a thing. The night passes like a work shift. There is no bright event. There is no rolling drum. There is a chain of small jobs finished on time. The stakes still wait at their marks. The horses sleep easy with dry backs. Bowstrings are not frayed. Wheels do not bind. The drains carry the rain to the grass at the foot of the hill. These things make a modest and exact beauty together. They do not ask praise. They simply lay ground for a firm tomorrow. Mist thins slowly over the grass. The soldiers take their assembly points while the tree shadows are still long. The earth shows the boot prints from last night, each one facing the same way. The commander lifts his hand, the formation locks from centre to wings. The line of stakes is already set. The tips darkened by kitchen smoke, space to shelter the archer's flanks without tripping the foot. From a distance the grey, brown and green cloths dulled by mud melt into the damp turf. There is no spectacle. The neatness of the ground is what first strikes the eye. The pikes dress their front. The right hand places the heel just behind a neighbour's toe. At the compression call, the whole rank slides half a step without skewing. Each shaft has been planed smooth. The touch is satin, no splinters. The steel heads jut in an even fringe. From the front, the line is flat. From the slant, it breaks in steps, open just enough for those behind to breathe and see. Beauty lies in how the spaces are not a finger's breadth too many. The archers loosen shoulders and warm the draw with counted pulls. The string changed last night has a soft shine. The quivers sit grouped behind the left heel. A small bend brings feathers to hand. The rangemaster counts by tapping a fingertip on the board edge, even as falling drops. All are silent until the count changes. Then the strings come up together. Once, twice, 3 times, then down. Each draw is short, only to be certain no hidden split lies inside the wax. On the wing, the billmen check the hooks on their long axes. The blades have just a smear of oil, no glare. The curved hook pulls a foe from the saddle. The flat bites at a horse's chest. The spike finds a joint seam. They swap places. The taller man steps ahead. The shorter stands a half step back so heads do not clash. When they advance, the rear keeps the front's pace by fixing his eyes on the spine, not on the feet. The cavalry waits on the flank, not standing directly behind the foot. The horses face the wind, ears flicking, breath smoking white. The curb chain has been tightened 1 link so the mouth closes without squeal. When the flag trembles lightly, the whole line of horses shifts its weight, 4 feet set back by half a step. They keep spacing so that when they must go, long lances pass the gap between foot clusters without striking. The beauty here is not in pounding hooves, it is in storing force without sliding out of line. The smith walks the ranks with a pouch of small rivets. He bends, fits one into a shoulder joint and taps twice. The metal answers with a dry note, not a ring. The armoured man's face eases. At the same time, another soldier lifts a shield and tests the wrist. The rims slide past without catching. The scratches on the plates are not ground away. They stay like waymarks from old days, reminders that this curvature once caught a cross-stroke. The beauty of a harness is not in its shine, it is in how it fits the owner after each life saved. Fine rain falls. The transport crew pulls a tarp over the cook pots. The quartermaster weighs salt, measures grain by wooden bowl and draws a charcoal line on the board. Each squad's share is set in a basket and covered with linen. The squad leaders glance and nod. On bad weather days there is no room for disputes over food. The rule of sharing keeps words few and spirits steady. A thin bowl of soup may not be tasty, yet if it is fairly given it is already warm. The scout team returns soaking. Mud cakes the hems, boots heavy as stone. They stop before the command tent, spread rough cloth and draw with mud the new edges of wood. The old pit traps half filled by rain. A thin line marks loose stones halfway up a slope. Another mark shows where clay lies soft and horses slip. The commander wraps his knife on the signs and then wipes one line away like striking it out. No flourish. A brief remark is enough to change the array. Now comes the hour for inter-arms drill. 3 strokes from a wooden whistle clap into the damp air. The front pike line advances 2 beats, halts and eases the points. The archers slot into the gaps, loose a volley, step back. The pikes seal the front again. From the right, a knot of billmen cut across and try their hooks on imagined shields, rolling a shoulder to avoid imagined spear points. The field becomes a moving map where parts hand off their places with the accuracy of cooks passing pans on a line. The deftness does not posture, yet it keeps the neighbour alive. A young soldier slips while turning and the butt of his spear taps the shin of the man on his left. The light tap is enough for the whole rank to pause half a beat. The commander points at the youth's heel to signal that he must tie his lace, and then gestures to repeat the last segment. No scolding. No laughter. A strict and warm silence. The young man steps back in, face set, his motions cleaner thereafter. The beauty of a formation is sometimes in how it allows a correction without snapping a taut cord. The sun climbs past a bank of cloud. Warmth washes the helmets. The formation shifts to setting stakes. The sharp ends go in slantwise. The bevel's set to catch strange lances. The spacing between rows is paced by the shortest man in the team so that in retreat all can pass. On the flattened turf, the rows appear like arms opening while keeping the fist closed. Close up, each stake shows fresh draw-knife marks. Far off, the system looks like a hedge grown from the ground. That is the woodworker's art in a soldier's hand. Noon comes and the wind turns. The command flag swings a small degree like a clock hand. The order to move camp goes out by small flag points passing through the unit. At each stop, the flag rises to eye height, turns a quarter circle and drops. The whole train moves with little sound. The lashings on the water barrels creak in cycles. Those with pumps go to the river and draw from the clearer run. As they turn away, they scatter lime on the wash spots so the bank does not become a foul place. In this way, earth and water are negotiated by small acts. At the rest ground, armour is partly stripped for airing. The mail shirt sits across a stake, heavy yet fallen into the owner's shape. The plate armour opens at the elbow hinges to let air through and prevent steaming. A soldier wipes the helmet lining and checks the quilting, replaces a loose thread with a tight stitch. On the rim of the plate there is a dent the size of a fingertip. Its owner says nothing about the blow endured. He only oils the edge to keep rust away. A scratch set aside like a held breath in a spot no one sees. That is the beauty of endurance. At the edge of the ground the carpenters dress a broken spear shaft. The saw follows the grain. The knife follows the saw. The new haft is clamped into the steel head and pinned with a nail. The carpenter sights straight, then sets the shaft on the earth to roll it. If it wobbles, he shaves a touch more. When it rolls true, he gives it back. A nod replaces thanks. The spear goes back to the rank as if it had never snapped. A grey bank slides over the hills. The flag signals heavy rain. The soldiers flip the tent awnings, pull the hems down to lower pegs so the wind does not blow under. The ditch around each tent is dug another hand deep. Barrel mouths are turned down and covered with waxed cloth. The kitchen set in lee is rebuilt. The flame low, the smoke hugging the ground and thinning fast. The whole camp draws into a neat ellipse. Wind, water and earth are no longer vague elements. They are lines the soldier learns to draw. Evening falls and a small party goes to the wood edge to pick dead dry fuel. They walk single file, one arm span apart, so that when a big branch cracks, all stop together. Back at camp, they stack the wood in the driest place with flat stones under it. Dry fuel is for misty nights. No one talks about the comfort of a flame. All know that in long days on open ground, a quiet bundle of dry kindling is worth more than a promise. When the last light drains from the tent edge, everything is where it belongs. The formation has drilled enough beats. The galley stakes are set true. Armour is dry. Lashings cinched tight. The new spear haft rolls straight. The paybook marks tomorrow's portion. The horse is blanketed thick and stands with one forefoot at rest. Quiet details link together into a durable thread. Night arrives with insects. The sentry hears the breeze slide over the roofs. One by one heads go down. No one waits for fireworks. No one tells a tale of glory. In the dark there is only a steady breath. The smell of oiled leather and the sound of water trickling through a drain. The quiet beauty of soldiering appears like the reverse side of embroidery. Not showy, yet every strand in place and every stitch tight. In the morning, when the mist lays thin on the ground again, the formation will rise from this order. No reminder is needed. They only have to keep doing what is rightly theirs so the neighbour can trust the small space between two spear points, between two steps, between two watches, and in those small spaces history has passed without crying out, leaving a faint warmth on the wet earth. Night closes over a damp meadow. The sound of metal settles like the last bead of dew on the edge of a banner. In the soft dark, the picture of the whole march comes clear. On the battlefield, what holds an army upright is not bright slogans but order. The spear ranks know their places. The archers know their cadence. The cavalry waits for the right gap to surge through without skewing. The commander does not need many words. A small flag and a nod are enough to shift the whole mass. Organisation is a discrete thread, passing through each small action and tying them into a durable strength. Weapons and armour are not ornaments. They are the tools of a trade. Mail hugs the shoulders. Plate is jointed so knee and elbow still move. The sword fits the hand, yet does not usurp the place of spear and long-hafted axe. Each piece has its own task, from a sharp point slipping into the seam of armour to an axe blade dragging an enemy from the saddle. Placed where they belong, they do their duty without display. That sobriety is more trustworthy than any sheen borrowed from a stage tale. Most decisions play out under the foot of city walls. Ladders, hammers, towers, heavy stones and slung ropes go with the sweat of those who haul. Opposite are deep moats, thick walls, arrow slits thin as thread, posterns that open and vanish. A siege is not as noisy as open battle, yet it gnaws at will, counts the grain, counts the water, even counts each gust of wind. When the final gate opens, the verdict was inked many days before by granaries and discipline. Terrain has never stood aside. One slope is enough to break the tempo of a wing. A patch of mud will seize heavy harness and take the run out of a horse's lance. Hedgerow, wood, edge, narrow brook. The hard path between fields all have a voice. Where they are used well, the field is drawn toward that side. Not chiefly by valour, but by listening to wind and reading ground. Behind the ranks lies a quiet logistics. Hard bread knocks on a helmet with a hard note, yet keeps a belly steady through a long day. The drove moves with them, giving fresh meat when needed. River water is not always safe, so small beer and wine do the work of drink. Boats on rivers and along the coast carry the long legs of the route. The supply train moves slowly, vulnerable to the waiting point of a lance. Each barrel lashing or each wheel pin is a rung in the ladder of the whole campaign. Training, your discipline and morale are tightly plated. The longbowman's arm grows up with his bow, muscles altered by 1,000 draws. The knight learns to ride and fight from youth, heavy in armour yet knowing how to lean at the right beat. The cavalry's charge strikes the spirit no less than flesh. Fear is everywhere, like dew under grass, yet discipline helps a soldier hold his place for himself and for the one beside him. Long wet days, hunger and wearing sickness test what stamina is made of. Many hosts travel with relics, seeking a brace for the heart in the hardest moments. Beyond the marching road lie the roofs and rice fields of common folk. An army passes and granaries thin. Taxes thicken to feed the war cost. Homes must give space for soldiers to sleep and horses to stand. A season of illness can follow the columns into the towns and leave the streets hushed. Under siege, the price of bread climbs by the day, markets thin, wells must be shared. War is not only where the drum is sounded, it also sits on the doorstep in the damp hem left on the line, at the counter where there is no lard left to sell. Seen whole, medieval fighting is the art of steering people and resources within harsh limits. There is no miracle, only the work of dividing rightly, placing rightly, waiting for the right moment. Step away from the lacquer of legend and history appears closer. Mud on boots, breath behind a helmet, a dent in a plate that once saved its owner. Those small details make the whole scene. Night wind moves across the grass. The stakes stand still. In the camp the fire sinks. Warm ash keeps breath in a pot where a thin sheen of fat still rides. The watch is relieved. A hand touches a spear shaft now dry. The whole camp breathes evenly, like a calm sea after a windy day. No cheer is needed. No ringing peroration is needed. It is enough to let the night close over an order already set. Tomorrow the flags will lift and the formation will take its places again. The old tasks repeat. Yet each time matters because it keeps one another alive. Perhaps the craft's beauty lies there. Not explosive, not begging the eye, only patient and in time. Once this is understood, the old stories grow less blinding. A calm, warm and true history remains. Enough for the listener to rest a head on the pillow and let the far-off metal fade into a small music in sleep.